Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Motorsports. We have just finished practice one. And the big news about all of the practice one is the fact that Lewis Hamilton of the Mercedes leads after practice one on a soft tire with a time of 1 minute 43.033. We're going to talk you through practice one quickly, give you a recap of what happened, all the nicks and bouts. First time back in Singapore since 2019.
Yes.
But yes, Reese, take us through how.
Yeah. Interesting first practice session. Obviously, lots of cars coming out early in the session to get some installation laps done. We saw the likes of Lando Norris with a lot of Flover's paint on his car, so obviously running some updates for this weekend. Obviously, early on, we also saw Charles Leclerc having issues with the brakes. So for most of the session, he was in the pits getting work done on his car.
And I mean, in a weekend where we've got Red Bull, potentially taking the drivers' championship with Max Verstappen, to see Ferrari have issues with Charles Leclerc so early on, he went on his out lap and didn't even finish the out lap. Immediately had problems. They brought him back into the pits and spent more than half of the practice session in the pits trying to fix the brakes. They bled the brakes, as it said. And then, went out on track, at least at the end, then managed to get a couple of laps in so on his softs and a medium lap, I think, as well.
Yes.
So at least they did manage to get some laps in, but there was a little bit of an early concern for Ferrari if that would have turned into a bigger issue, I think.
Yes. Well, luckily we had Carlos Sainz having a pretty good session out there, finishing sixth overall,
Yes.
with 1 second slower lap.
It's just
than-
1.1 seconds slower
Yes.
than Hamilton's lap, also on softs as well. But as we know with Singapore, it's a very, very tight street circuit.
Yeah.
So it's one of the most challenging tracks on the calendar, if not some of these drivers would argue the most challenging.
Yes, it's definitely very physically challenging as well as mentally because the walls are so close to you the entire time.
Mm.
And we saw quite a few people getting a bit
But
loose in
is
some of the
a bit
corners.
close to the wall and sometimes making friends with the wall.
Yeah.
As we saw, Russell literally just kissed the wall. He just
Well,
lost
right
it
his
a little
wing.
bit and managed to slow his car down enough. Didn't do any damage at all, but did literally just kiss the wall with the front of his wing.
Carlos Sainz almost hit the wall at one stage.
Carlos
Very, very
Sainz
close.
on a fast turn almost hit the wall, and then literally not even a minute later, we saw exactly what can happen with Carlos Sainz almost losing it, as we saw with Lance Stroll, who then red flagged the practice session at around 25 minutes, 30 minutes left, 25 minutes
Yes.
left. So he red flagged because he did manage to clip his back left tire back into the wall.
Yes.
Went
Breaking
out of
the
the car.
suspension and causing a puncture,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So that's one less set of tyres for Aston Martin this weekend.
This weekend already. But speaking of Aston Martin, the interesting thing is that both of them only finished practice one on mediums. They didn't have any soft runs, but they really held up really well. I mean, Lance Stroll, for all that he's had his red flag, is sitting eighth currently off after practice session one, only 2.1 seconds behind. So
Well,
on a medium
That's
tire,
not very far behind either.
that
Also on
and
mediums.
Vettel as well, also on medium tire, not very far behind. So Aston Martin actually looking relatively strong otherwise for this weekend. Sebastian Vettel, rather Fernando Alonso was doing very, very well for most of the practice.
Yeah, he'll definitely be someone to watch for this weekend.
And also has only finished practice on medium, so hasn't had a
Yes.
soft run yet. So
He did finish in the pits, unfortunately.
yes.
Alpine were doing some work on his car, so
Mm.
we don't know yet what the issue was, but we shall find out
No.
for sure.
But just to run you through the whole order and give you an indication of times. So Lewis Hamilton, the big surprise of the whole day is the fact that he managed to get the Merc round. And we were talking, funny enough, inside saying, Merc don't look particularly strong this year, etc., etc. But this track should be better for them because it is a bit more of a downforce track, which does suit them more than a fast track, as you'd see with Red Bulls, for example. So Ferrari and Mercedes should be a lot closer, if not in some instances better than the Red Bull this weekend, simply because their cars are made to do this better than the Red Bull is. But leading through anyway, we have Lewis Hamilton first from Mercedes with a time of 1.43.03. And then we have Max Verstappen, as usual, in Red Bull at just 0.08 behind Hamilton, so only just beat him. Charles Leclerc following that in only had about 4 or 5 laps around at 0.4 seconds behind that, so a bit of a jump from there. And then Sergio Perez from Red Bull as well, 0.8 seconds behind that in fourth.
Yes. After that, we have George Russell in fifth, a whole second behind his teammate, which is quite a large gap for so early on in the weekend. But hopefully he'll be able to close that a bit later. We then have Carlos Sainz in sixth with 1.1 seconds behind the session leader. Then Ocon, which was quite a surprise in the Alpine. Then followed by Lance Stroll, who had his crash obviously midway through the session. Then followed by Pierre Gasly and Fernando Alonso finishing up the top 10.
The top 10, yes. And just to run you through the bottom 11, as we said, Sebastian Vettel quite quick on a medium tyre at 2.3 seconds behind, but then Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren. Both McLarens have been quite disappointing so far this practice session. Very disappointing, if we're honest, in terms of their times.
I'm quite glad to see Danny Rick at least ahead of Lando Norris.
Daniel Ricciardo is well ahead of Lando Norris, obviously, but Lando Norris does seem to be running a lot of new upgrades, so I think it's trying to get to grips with that, to be fair. Valtteri Bottas in 13th, Kevin Magnussen of the Haas in 14th, Yuki Tsunoda 15th, Alexander Albon Williams in 16th, Zhou Guanyu in 17th, Mick Schumacher in 18th, Lando Norris, as we talked about earlier, in the McLaren in 19th, and, of course, Nicholas Latifi rounding up the pack in last, of the Williams at 4 seconds behind.
I think he owns that spot by now.
You know what the thing is? It should almost be retired. I think after the season, I think they should retire the 20th slot, and I think it should automatically go from 19th to 21st because I think that is Nicholas Latifi's number.
Yes,
but so an interesting practice.
Yeah,
I think
definitely
a lot. Obviously, the teams will use this for stats. They'll use this for all sorts of research for to getting tactics for the race. It's a very difficult climate, very difficult race in itself. So going into practice 2,
yes, it should be a very interesting session. Obviously, the first session fully under the lights, which should be quite good. It'll be first full night session.
Yes, it will. So we'll look forward to seeing that. But that was your practice 1. So this is Forever Motorsports. Please do feel free to drop a like, subscribe, follow. If you want to see how you can watch Formula 1 this weekend, there is a link in the description for how you can do that and a video explaining exactly how you can do that. So do enjoy that, and we'll see you now. Hello, my name is Mark Pettit, and I'm joined by Reese Stedman, and this is Forever Motorsports. We've just finished practice 2, and Carlos Sainz is on pole in terms of the time from today's practice 2. His time was 1 minute 42.58 seconds, closely followed by his teammate Charles Leclerc, and then George Russell in 3rd, Max Verstappen 4th, and Lewis Hamilton in 5th. Esteban Ocon came 6th, Valtteri Bottas 7th, Fernando Alonso 8th, Sergio Perez 9th, and Lance Stroll 10th. Apparently, the big highlights from today in terms of practice 2, being a relatively uneventful session, was the fact that Pierre Gasly's air intake caught fire whilst he was entering the pit, which was very quickly doused at least. He did manage to escape the vehicle without any injuries. Not that it was a particularly big incident for all that. That's the main highlight, really. Didn't seem to be too much of a problem because he went back out onto track later on to go and put a few more laps in. What was interesting today was the fact that Max Verstappen seemed to be doing a lot in his car most of practice 2 and only got out near the end just to put in a quick lap. Otherwise, he was sitting quite far down. But yeah, today's practice is very, very easy going. Not much surprise except for the fact that the Ferraris and the Mercs quite powerful as they should be on this sort of a track, being a street circuit, very tight. Lots of corners, not too many long straights. So
yeah, the Ferrari's got a lot of good running done today. I think showing their true pace over practice 1. So it should be very interesting for qualifying tomorrow.
So the Red Bulls will certainly be challenged, I think, a lot more this weekend than we've seen in previous weekends, and that's owing down to the fact that this track does suit the Ferrari, the setup more, and the Merc setup more, where they're supposedly quicker. Well, we know for Ferrari, of course, they're quicker in the downforce areas with lots of tight cornering, as they're quicker through the corners than the Red Bulls can be. But obviously, the Red Bull, their engine speed and the powertrain so quick in any straight that they can make it up in that time. So right now, qualifying looking very, very close. Hopefully for tomorrow, because the practice pace, especially from P2, says from 1st to 5th is just 0.25 seconds.
And if it rains, it should make it even more interesting for sure.
That might suit Max though.
Yes,
as obviously Max is a brilliant driver in the wet, but should make for a very interesting race either way. So hopefully teeing up for what could be quite an exciting qualifying tomorrow, because the practice has shown us that very, very close race pace between half the cars. There's lots of work currently being done, obviously. We'll have practice 3 tomorrow to have a final say about all of that.
Yes, for our quali sims. So that should be a good one to watch for sure. We
Yeah.
hope to see you there.
Yes, indeed. So that was our day for practice today. Hopefully, qualifying tomorrow and FP3 will definitely provide some more insights and get us a better idea of who's going to be coming out on top on Sunday. But yes, until then, this is Forever Motorsports. I am Mark. This is Reese. Please do follow our social medias and please do give our channel a subscribe. Yeah, we will see you tomorrow. Hello and welcome to Forever Motorsports. I am Mark Peasant and this is Reese Stedman, and we've just finished practice 3. Quite an interesting session, except for the fact that obviously the first half an hour was spent raining.
Yes, quite a wet session that we had here today, but very interesting in the last half an hour with a lot of running being done by drivers on wets and intermediates.
Indeed. So we see the session finish with Charles Leclerc on top, half a second quicker than his rival Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, then followed by Carlos Sainz of the Ferrari and Fernando Alonso in the Alpine, again showing this weekend that he's got a lot of pace still, in 4th in the Alpine.
Yes, very interesting to see how quick the Alpines have been throughout this weekend. Definitely showing quite a lot of pace. Will be very interesting to watch them in qualifying and in the race tomorrow.
Just to round up your top 10, so it's Sergio Perez in 5, Red Bull, Lance Stroll in 6th of the Aston Martin. Again, the Aston Martins also this weekend have been quite quick.
Yes, I'm hoping to see Sebastian Vettel have a good weekend, considering he was the last race winner here in 2019 at the last Singapore Grand Prix.
And the other Alpine of Esteban Ocon in 7th, Sebastian Vettel 8th, and George Russell, Mercedes, of which Mercedes, interestingly, this entire session, spent about 50 minutes of the session in the pits. They only came out in about the last 10 minutes to try and do some laps.
Yes, and they did not put in any impressive times for us to see. Clearly not doing very well in the rain here, which could show what will happen in qualifying later and in the race tomorrow if it does rain.
Exactly. So we've got George Russell in 9th, and then Daniel Ricciardo in the less improved, as it's not had anything done to it, in 10th, beating his teammate who's just had all of his upgrades put in for this weekend, that being Lando Norris. So Daniel Ricciardo's McLaren going faster around this practice session. So interesting to see that happen. Then rounding it up, Kevin Magnussen in 11 in the Haas, then Lewis Hamilton of the Mercedes in 12th.
Once again being outperformed by his teammate. So very interesting to see from Hamilton, who has still yet to win a race this season, the first season of his Formula One career, not winning a race.
And unfortunately, I fail to see where he's going to get that win from. In 13th, we had Pierre Gasly of the AlphaTauri, and then Mick Schumacher in 14th, and then bottom 5 being relatively, bottom 5 were Yuki Tsunoda in 15th, the bottom 5 being relatively normal, except for the fact that Lando Norris of the McLaren in 16th was much slower than his teammate Daniel Ricciardo.
Yes, McLaren will be very disappointed with that because they have put all of their new upgrades on Lando Norris's car, deciding not to upgrade Daniel Ricciardo for this weekend.
And rounding up the bottom 4 is obviously the 2 Williams and the 2 Alfa Romeos, Alexander Albon of the Williams in 17th, the 2 Williams in the middle of Bottas and Zhou, and Goat Tiffy at the end in 20th.
In his resident spot of 20th.
I believe we shall retire that spot 20th. We will let it be Latifi's forever. We'll go 19th and 21st from next year. But,
yes, very interesting session at least. Obviously a lot of talk going on about the alleged cost cap breach, allegedly being Red Bull and Aston Martin, but we will only find out next week Wednesday when the FIA release their official statement on their findings.
And the communication they have sent out so far is it's very
unknown at the moment, at least.
Uninformative, really.
Yes.
Because all it says is that there is an investigation going on, and pretty much that's it. We know that it's a budget cap investigation, and we know that they say they're going to give their say on Wednesday. Other than that, no information whatsoever. So we will only have to unfortunately wait for Wednesday, because I don't think you'll see any more information come out about that this weekend. So we'll just get to focus on the racing. So it does make for a very interesting qualifying session, because we did see now drivers going to practice on the intermediate wet tyres, which they reckon qualifying will see a bit of rain. So it will be an interesting qualifying, to say the least.
Well, we hope that we won't get washed out too much in qualifying, otherwise we will not be able to get too much running. But hopefully we have a similar session to now where it starts drying up later in the session. Hopefully we'll even be able to get some dry tire running in qualifying, hopefully qualifying 3.
100%. Well, what this does say is that the qualifying session and the race should be quite an interesting spectacle, I think.
Yes, with varying weather conditions.
The Red Bulls have not been on top really. I mean, they've been with the pace. Don't get me wrong, they've been with the pace, but they've not been the strongest car in the circuit.
Yes, Ferraris have seemed to be very strong this weekend. Definitely bringing their A game to try and stop Verstappen from winning the championship this weekend.
Yes. Unfortunately, I think it's much of a we win the battle but lose the war, as it will be this weekend. Should Ferrari manage to take a 1-2 spot, as it is only a matter of time for when Max Verstappen and Red Bull win both championships for the constructors and the drivers. But Singapore Grand Prix looking quite interesting for the qualifying session, and we will see you there. This has been Forever Motorsports. This is Mark Spies. Please do give us a like, a follow, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next session.
Hello and welcome to Forever F1 on Forever Sports. And today we're going to be talking about how you can watch the Formula One live without any worries about buffering or being taken down and stuff like that. So today we're going to be talking about how you can get access to that and make sure that you never ever miss a moment of the 2022 Formula One season, which I think is going to be one of the best seasons we've seen in the last decade. It's already been a pretty scintillating first 2 races. We've got Australia this weekend. We will be live for a couple of watch-alongs over the season and stuff like that. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, the biggest question we get, because we've been doing a couple of live streams with live match time and live timings and live trackers, for example, is how can I watch the race? Now, the best way to consume Formula One is to actually subscribe to Formula One TV Pro, which means that you get to live stream every single Formula One race, qualifying, practice, Formula 2, Formula 3, as well as the Porsche Super Cup. You can stream it all on Formula One TV Pro. You can also stream the onboard cameras for every single driver, so you can select each driver and you can watch it from the onboard cameras. You can listen to the team radios. So you get all access to all of that through Formula One TV Pro at just $5 a month or $45 for the year. Now, in comparison, you can get, for example, Forever One TV Access, where you can watch all the replays, but you can't watch any live content. Now, that is not available. So Formula One TV Pro is not available in a number of countries, including Spain, Germany, UK, Ireland, Japan, I think Qatar, Hong Kong, Australia. There are so many different countries where it's not available. However, you can then get access to that using a VPN, and we recommend ExpressVPN because we have tested it and stuff like that. It's the most reliable VPN when it comes to watching sport and streaming sport from around the world. So basically what you have to do, there is a step-by-step guide down in the comments below. But first things first, you've got to get an ExpressVPN subscription. We have got a special deal with them, so you can go and click on the link down in the description, and you've got to sign up for ExpressVPN. Once you've done that, you can then you turn on you select a server, for example, so you can connect to a USA server, a South Africa server, any server that is not listed in the countries where Formula One TV Pro is not available. And basically what that does is that it geolocates your computer or your device to that place. So it makes it seem as if you are currently sitting in the United States, for example, where Formula One TV Pro access is available. And you can then sign up for F1 TV Pro and watch every single second of every single session on a track, all the races across all the 4 different divisions, as I said, onboard cameras and stuff like that. It really is as simple as that. If you are trying to find a free stream, it is an illegal stream. There's always the chance it'll be taken down. There's always the chance that you can get in trouble for stuff like that. So I've always, I think that given the fact it's not that expensive, I really do encourage you to do it properly and make sure that you never have to worry. Every single race weekend, you are sorted. You know that you're going to have something. You know it's going to work. And that's what you can do. ExpressVPN, Formula One TV Pro, and you are away, and you can watch every single second of the 2022 season. As I said, the steps are down in the description, along with the links to ExpressVPN, as well as to Formula One TV Pro. So go and check it out. Go and get yourself sorted and make sure you enjoy the rest of the Formula One season. Please do smash like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. And we'll chat to you guys all very soon.
Right, and we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Motorsports. We are here live with the Singapore Grand Prix about to begin. But
Looking very wet out there today.
Indeed.
Has been pouring down in the last 45 minutes to half an hour. Hoping that it will clear up enough in order to start on time today.
Well-
Track is starting to dry, thank goodness.
yes, at least the good thing is the rain has stopped and has stopped for a little bit now, but it was absolutely pouring earlier with torrential rain, so still quite wet around the track. So it's already been told a delayed start.
Yes.
So the delayed start will obviously affect our race today. So not going to be starting at 2 o'clock promptly. We'll be waiting then because cars have not even come out of the pits. They've not even started the start procedures at all. But we will hopefully have racing soon as the track is dry. There are stewards, well, not dry, but the track is starting to dry.
Yes.
And the stewards are on track. They are sweeping away the water as it is right now. And we are just continuously having some interviews with some other team bosses, etc., etc. So right now we are following Christian Horner's going again. As I say, this entire weekend, Christian Horner has been in front of the media at every possible opportunity. I think mainly because of how much controversy is surrounding Red Bull this weekend and the allegations that have been made. He's been very, very forward with putting himself in front of the media, answering every question that they could possibly throw at him.
Yes, even going as far as to say that they will take other teams to court for defamation because of all of these allegations against them. So possibly not being the ones in breach of these what is it, the
Allegations, I
Yeah,
suppose. The
allegations,
FIA budget cap breach.
yes, that's
they're
it,
saying
the
they're
budget
not.
cap breach.
They're quite confident that they're not the ones, apparently. So
We're currently seeing some of the stewards out on the track sweeping away water. Track is drying, so we should have a wet start to the day, hoping that we will be able to get some dry running as well later. Will make for a very interesting race in terms of strategy. Let's see if Ferrari can make a good strategy call today.
you're asking Ferrari to make a good strategy call. I think, unfortunately, as most fans know, that's a dime in a dozen. But what it does do with this rain now starting, because it seems that it's not really looking like it's going to rain anymore during this race, or if it does, it'll be right towards the latter end. As we say, that the really cool thing is that it should result in a situation where, as you say, the tactics are going to play a big part, but also that we know Singapore is always yellow flagged and always got a safety car out onto track every time we've raced to Singapore.
Yes, as well as a high chance of getting a red flag at this track because it is so difficult to extract cars once they have crashed.
So what it should mean is that whilst this track is quite difficult to overtake, similar to Monaco in that sort of respect, not as difficult as Monaco.
It is a bit
But-
wider than Monaco at least.
Yes, but similar sort of circumstances where it is very, very difficult to overtake. What you might see and what you should hopefully see is quite a few instances where you're having to restart the race under conditions and certain things, so they bunch up all the cars more often. So what you'll see is a much tighter race than you might see at your traditional circuits, where you'll have first place 30 seconds out or 40 seconds out from second, and then building these huge gaps. You shouldn't see that too much today. So
Well, we
whilst-
certainly hope not. We hope for some close racing today.
Yes, and the other driver who's going to be hoping for some close racing is definitely Max Verstappen, who, if you'd followed qualifying yesterday, had a complete blunder with qualifying 3, where he was told to box when he was about 2.7, he said, 2.7 seconds ahead of the pole time that was given by Charles Leclerc just before the final corner, and was told to box, as they needed to have enough fuel for the fuel sample test after the qualifying session, and the engineers were worried that they wouldn't if he had completed that lap and made it all the way back to the pits. So they took the very brave decision of saying box, and
Which meant Max did not have a competitive time on the board and unfortunately is starting from 8th position today.
yes. So we have Max in 8th in the weekend that he could potentially win the Drivers' Championship, but otherwise the Ferraris were completely happy about life, and they were saying that sorry, I'm saying happy about life, but Ferrari are very happy about life because they came first and they came fourth
Yes.
in the qualifying times. So
With
right near
obviously
the top.
on the second car in the front row is Sergio Perez, which he could, if he gets ahead of Leclerc, could hopefully hold him up and give Max Verstappen a chance of getting into the top 3.
Indeed. So a very interesting race in terms of drivers' positions, I think is a good way of looking at it. So the drivers' positions being that we've got Perez on the front row rather than Max Verstappen. So of which Red Bull was expected to be there, not Perez. And Perez, we know, is a very defensive driver, is a very good defensive driver. So he's got Hamilton starting in behind him. So if Perez can get a half-decent start, what you will see, hopefully, is a big battle between Hamilton and Perez and a couple of the cars behind that, because Perez loves to defend for quite a while. And without DRS, of course...
Well, he is the Mexican Minister of Defense.
Yes, exactly. So without DRS in the beginning of this race, because it's so wet, they'll obviously start under wet conditions, which means no DRS will be open. You'll see quite a lot of battling within those circumstances, and it's going to be very tough for the drivers because obviously when it's wet, it's very, very dangerous for the car. There's high risk for crashes and things like that. So when you're trying to defend and overtake under these sort of conditions, you'll see some very, very interesting racing. You'll see some very risky maneuvers. Could result in a yellow flag, crashes, safety cars. You might well see your big name drivers crash out of the race. So while Singapore is not a big overtaking race, what you could see is a lot of interesting things happen with regards to the final result.
Yes, definitely. We always have a lot of drama here in Singapore, as I'm sure you can remember the two Ferraris crashing out into Max Verstappen in the first corner. Yes, so Singapore is definitely always one of the races to look forward to in the calendar.
So a very, very interesting race ahead for us as well. But yes, we are, just in case you have just joined us, we are still waiting for the race start. As much as it would have said in normal schedule in 3 minutes time, we would have seen a race start. None of the cars are out onto track yet. They've not been taken out of the pit lane because we've had torrential rain in Singapore. It has been absolutely drenching the track. But has stopped raining now for about 15 to 20 minutes now.
Yes.
But stewards are out on track. They're sweeping away all of the residue water.
Yes, and hopefully we will have the pit lane open soon for cars to get round onto the track and onto the grid.
Yes. And so we've got a comment coming in explaining as to why Russell is starting last. In case you guys have also not seen, Merck, as a result of Russell doing rather poorly in qualifying 2 yesterday, Russell has now had a new power unit put in. So with his new power unit, he's now taken a grid penalty and will start in the pit lane rather than last. He'll actually start in the pit lane.
Yes, I think that's a good decision from Mercedes. May as well take those grid penalties when you are not in a fighting position for the top 10.
Yeah. So Merck having an interesting race here. I mean, obviously it's all steam ahead for Hamilton, but what we will see hopefully is a Merck comeback, I'm hoping, towards the end of the season, just because Merck really have not been at the races as much as Ferrari and Red Bull haven't in terms of pace and strategy sometimes. The strategy has been half decent for George Russell, to be fair, most of the season. But they have stuffed up every now and then with Hamilton, with bringing him into the pits when they probably shouldn't have, and then not pitting him when they should have under safety car conditions. So,
if this weekend is any indication, I think we will see the Mercedes up there for the rest of the season. They certainly seem to have gotten to grips with their car finally, and were fighting for pole position yesterday.
Yeah, so Merck, as I say, they and also what was bizarre is how they did come out of nowhere for fighting for pole in qualifying, because their practice sessions were not good. They were decent. They weren't
Lewis
anything
Hamilton
spectacular.
topped one of the practice sessions.
Yes, he did top one of the practice sessions, but only right near the end. So it took them a while to get the car in the right spec and for the drivers to get around. So they didn't really put in good early times in any of the practice sessions. And when they started the qualifying sessions, they were doing well straight away, more or less. But then it was just Q3 that Hamilton really absolutely bossed it for the entire thing. Until the very last couple of laps, where they put in their last fast laps, and literally just 0.05 seconds between first and third.
So we're seeing here that the start procedure will start at 5 minutes past the hour, and the pit lane will open at 25 minutes past the hour, with the formation lap only being another 45 to 50 minutes later.
So we're more or less starting this race an hour and 5 minutes behind. So we will be waiting for a long time. Unfortunately, you will be with us for quite a while. So we will run through some stats with you. We will go through some things. We might take
as well as our race predictions.
Yeah, race predictions as well.
We'd love to hear your race predictions as well for today. there is a poll on in our comments, so we'd like to see your predictions for today.
Indeed. And if we go and look at the poll right now, fans of Verstappen and Leclerc, it seems. But what's quite interesting is how 41% still believe Verstappen will win this race from 8th, which is quite a surprising stat. But we've got Charles Leclerc with 37% and Hamilton with 18%, whilst the rest of the drivers have 5% of the votes. So
yes, and if you think anyone else will win the race, please drop a comment and let us know, and we will read it out for you guys.
I'm very surprised not to see any punts for Perez.
Yes,
because considering the Red Bulls' power and their strategy they've had this season, and Perez starting in the front row, if he gets a half decent start and gets away quite decently, he'll put himself into pole. And being such a good defensive driver, one would assume he should be able to hold on for that for a while, especially on a track like this where it is so difficult to overtake. So I'm surprised nobody's really punting for Perez, but it does just show that we are fans of certain drivers, aren't we? Max Verstappen being a favorite for many, Charles Leclerc being the other, Hamilton of course. So those three are just mainly taking the poll predictions we've got so far. But
seeing a lot of the commentators now in the pit lane, no more umbrellas, thank goodness, which means that the rain has eased up. Teams are starting to get ready, hopefully, to send their cars out.
Yeah, so the pit start procedure will start in 3 minutes. So you'll start to see cars leave the pit lane. They'll make their way around the track just before they go onto the start grid, and they'll then do the prep from there again.
It is also quite helpful for the teams with their lap to the grid, as it does help them just get a feel for the grip levels out there on track, as it has now been washed green again, which means that there is no rubber laid down from the rest of the weekend,
Yes.
which would make the race quite difficult, and we will see the race track evolving throughout in about half an hour to 40 minutes.
All right. Perfect. We will see you then. Transition.
What? Yes, this is.
I used to back then. I remember that I was drunk out my mind when we kissed for the first time. In the back of your car, we passed out counting stars. Promised all these years we'd pack our things and disappear. I never thought I would see you here after all this time. Away out of this small town. Got a place at school you didn't hang around. Every day you're far away, these streets don't feel the same. Everywhere is painted with your name. I remember that I was drunk out my mind when we kissed for the first time. In the back of your car we passed out counting stars. Promised all these years we'd pack our things and disappear. I never thought I would see you here after all this time. I remember that I was drunk out my mind when we kissed for the first time. In the back of your car we passed out counting stars. Promised all these years we'd pack our things and disappear. I never thought I would see you here. Try to replace you with somebody out there. If I didn't chase you, would you even care? And if I lost my mind, would you come around? I will keep you safe and sound after all this time. Words spill out of your mouth. You wish you were someone else. I miss you, but I know you miss your old self too. Never once golden.
sound, back to the sound. Sound, back to the sound.
Well, maybe I'm done, maybe I've lost. Still putting up a fight because I love my mom, I love my family. When I was young, they would all look after me. I don't know why, but I feel like a burden. I spent my life overthinking my purpose. Can't really cry, I'm so used to the hurt. Trauma keeps up at me at the wrong moment. Oh, I just wanna numb the pain for a minute. I just wanna run away on vacation. I don't know what else to say now. I just need to numb the pain. Numb the pain for a minute. I just wanna run away on vacation. I don't know what else to say now. I just need to numb the pain. A broken glass while I'm thinking in my head. I mind my own, I don't even break a sweat. Oh, matters is insane. Why you still live in vain? I'm not the one, you're the victim of your own mistakes. It's sad to hear the lies. under the street lights, under the street lights. I'm not the one, you're the victim of your own mistakes. Untold stories, they were left behind. The silent breeze, I got nothing on my mind. This madness is insane. Why you still live in vain? I'm not the one, you're the victim of your own mistakes. It's time to hit the lights, under the street lights, under the street lights.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Motorsports. We have just finished practice one. And the big news about all of the practice one is the fact that Lewis Hamilton of the Mercedes leads after practice one on a soft tyre with a time of 1 minute 43.033. We're going to talk you through practice one quickly, give you a recap of what happened, all the nicks and bouts. First time back in Singapore since 2019.
Yes.
But yes, Reese, take us through.
Yeah, interesting first practice session. Obviously, lots of cars coming out early in the session to get some installation laps done. We saw the likes of Lando Norris with a lot of Flover's paint on his car, so obviously running some updates for this weekend. Obviously, early on, we also saw Charles Leclerc having issues with the brakes. So for most of the session, he was in the pits getting work done on his car.
And I mean, in a weekend where we've got Red Bull, potentially taking the Drivers' Championship with Max Verstappen, to see Ferrari have issues with Charles Leclerc so early on, he went on his out lap and didn't even finish the out lap. Immediately had problems. They brought him back into the pits and spent more than half of the practice session in the pits trying to fix the brakes. They bled the brakes, as it said. And then, went out on track, at least at the end, then managed to get a couple of laps in on his softs and a medium lap, I think, as well.
Yes.
So at least they did manage to get some laps in, but there was a little bit of an early concern for Ferrari if that would have turned into a bigger issue, I think.
Yes. Well, luckily we had Carlos Sainz having a pretty good session out there, finishing 6th overall.
Yes.
With 1 second slower lap.
It's just 1.1 seconds slower than Hamilton's lap, also on softs as well. But as we know with Singapore, it's a very, very tight street circuit. So it's one of the most challenging tracks on the calendar, if not, some of these drivers would argue, the most challenging.
Yes, it's definitely very physically challenging as well as mentally because the walls are so close to you the entire time. And we saw quite a few people getting a bit loose.
A bit close to the wall and sometimes making friends at the wall. As we saw, Russell literally just kissed the wall. He just lost it a little bit and managed to slow his car down enough. Didn't do any damage at all, but did literally just kiss the wall with the front of his wing.
Carlos Sainz almost hit the wall at one stage.
Carlos Sainz on a fast turn almost hit the wall, and then literally not even a minute later, we saw exactly what can happen with Carlos Sainz almost losing it, as we saw with Lance Stroll, who then red flagged the practice session at around 25 minutes, 30 minutes left, 25 minutes
left.
Yes. So he red flagged because he did manage to clip his back left tire back into the wall.
Yes, breaking the suspension and causing a puncture, unfortunately. So that's one less set of tires for Aston Martin this weekend
already. But speaking of Aston Martin, the interesting thing is that both of them only finished practice one on mediums. They didn't have any soft runs, but they really held up really well. I mean, Lance Stroll, for all that he's had his red flag, is sitting 8th currently off after practice session one, only 2.1 seconds behind. So on a medium tire,
not very far behind either.
And Vettel as well, also on medium tire, not very far behind. So Aston Martin actually looking relatively strong otherwise for this weekend. Sebastian Vettel, rather Fernando Alonso was doing very, very well for most of the practice.
Yeah, he will definitely be someone to watch for this weekend.
And also has only finished practice on medium, so hasn't had a
Yes.
soft run yet. So
He did finish in the pits, unfortunately.
yes.
Alpine were doing some work on his car, so we don't know yet what the issue was, but we shall find out
No.
for sure.
But just to run you through the whole order and give you an indication of times. So Lewis Hamilton, the big surprise of the whole day is the fact that he managed to get the Merc round. And we were talking, funny enough, inside saying, Merc don't look particularly strong this year, etc., etc. But this track should be better for them because it is a bit more of a downforce track, which does suit them more than a fast track, as you'd see with Red Bulls, for example. So Ferrari and Mercedes should be a lot closer, if not in some instances better than the Red Bull this weekend, simply because their cars are made to do this better than the Red Bull is. But leading through anyway, we have Lewis Hamilton first from Mercedes with a time of 1.43.03. And then we have Max Verstappen, as usual, in Red Bull at just 0.08 behind Hamilton, so only just beat him. Charles Leclerc following that in, only had about 4 or 5 laps around at 0.4 seconds behind that, so a bit of a jump from there. And then Sergio Perez from Red Bull as well, 0.8 seconds behind that in 4th.
Yes, after that we have George Russell in 5th, a whole second behind his teammate, which is quite a large gap for so early on in the weekend. But hopefully he will be able to close that a bit later. We then have Carlos Sainz in 6th with 1.1 seconds behind the session leader. Then Ocon, which was quite a surprise in the Alpine. Then followed by Lance Stroll, who had his crash obviously midway through the session. Then followed by Pierre Gasly and Fernando Alonso finishing up the top 10.
The top 10, yes. And just to run you through the bottom 11, as we said, Sebastian Vettel quite quick on a medium tyre at 2.3 seconds behind, but then Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren. Both McLarens have been quite disappointing so far this practice session. Very disappointing, if we're honest, in terms of their times.
I'm quite glad to see Danny Rick at least ahead of Lando Norris.
Daniel Ricciardo is well ahead of Lando Norris, obviously, but Lando Norris does seem to be running a lot of new upgrades. So I think it's trying to get to grips with that, to be fair. Valtteri Bottas in 13th, Kevin Magnussen of the Haas in 14th, Yuki Tsunoda 15th, Alexander Albon Williams in 16th, Zhou Guanyu in 17th, Mick Schumacher in 18th, Lando Norris, as we talked about earlier, in the McLaren in 19th, and of course Nicholas Latifi rounding up the pack in last of the Williams at 4 seconds behind.
I think he owns that spot by now.
You know what the thing is? It should almost be retired. I think after the season, I think they should retire the 20th slot, and I think it should automatically go from 19th to 21st because I think that is Nicholas Latifi's number.
Yes,
but so an interesting practice.
Yeah,
I think a lot. Obviously, the teams will use this for stats. They'll use this for all sorts of research for getting tactics for the race. It's a very difficult climate, very difficult race in itself. So going into practice 2,
yes, it should be a very interesting session. Obviously, the first session fully under the lights, which should be quite good. It'll be the first full night session.
Yes, it will. So we'll look forward to seeing that. But that was your practice 1. So this is Forever Motorsports. Please do feel free to drop a like, subscribe, follow. If you want to see how you can watch Formula 1 this weekend, there is a link in the description for how you can do that and a video explaining exactly how you can do that. So do enjoy that, and we'll see you now. Hello, my name is Mark Pettit and I'm joined by Reese Stedman, and this is Forever Motorsports. We've just finished practice 2 and Carlos Sainz is on pole in terms of the time from today's practice 2. His time was 1 minute 42.58 seconds, closely followed by his teammate Charles Leclerc, and then George Russell in 3rd, Max Verstappen 4th, and Lewis Hamilton in 5th. Esteban Ocon came 6th, Valtteri Bottas 7th, Fernando Alonso 8th, Sergio Perez 9th, and Lance Stroll 10th. Apparently, the big highlights from today in terms of practice 2, being a relatively uneventful session, was the fact that Pierre Gasly's air intake caught fire whilst he was entering the pit, which was very quickly doused at least. He did manage to escape the vehicle without any injuries. Not that it was a particularly big incident for all that. That's the main highlight, really. Didn't seem to be too much of a problem because he went back out into track later on to go and put a few more laps in. What was interesting today was the fact that Max Verstappen seemed to be doing a lot in his car most of practice 2 and only got out near the end just to put in a quick lap. Otherwise, he was sitting quite far down. But yeah, today's practice is very, very easy going. Not much surprise, except for the fact that the Ferraris and the Mercs quite powerful as they should be on this sort of a track, being a street circuit, very tight, lots of corners, not
High
too many long
downforce, yes.
straights. So
Yeah, the Ferrari's got a lot of good running done today. I think showing their true pace over practice one. So it should be very interesting for qualifying tomorrow.
That's that. So the Red Bulls will certainly be challenged, I think, a lot more this weekend than we've seen in previous weekends, and that's owing down to the fact that this track does suit the Ferrari, the setup more, and the Merc setup more, where they're supposedly quicker. Well, we know for Ferrari, of course, they're quicker in the downforce areas with lots of tight cornering, as they're quicker through the corners than the Red Bulls can be. But obviously the Red Bull, their engine speed and the powertrain so quick in any straight that they can make it up in that time. So right now qualifying looking very, very close, hopefully, for tomorrow, because the practice pace, especially from P2, says from first to fifth is just 0.25 seconds.
And if it rains, it should make it even more interesting for sure.
That might suit Max though.
Yes, that
as obviously Max is a brilliant driver in the wet, but should make for a very interesting race either way. So hopefully teeing up for what could be quite an exciting qualifying tomorrow, because the practice has shown us that very, very close race pace between half the cars. There's lots of work currently being done, obviously. We'll have practice 3 tomorrow to have a final say about all of that.
Yes, for our quali sims. So that should be a good one to watch for sure. We hope to see you there.
Yes, indeed. So that was our day for practice today. Hopefully qualifying tomorrow, and FP3 will definitely provide some more insights and get us a better idea of who's going to be coming out on top on Sunday. But yes, until then, this is Forever Motorsports. I am Mark. This is Reese. Please do follow our social medias, and please do give our channel a subscribe. Yeah, we will see you tomorrow. Hello and welcome to Forever Motorsports. I am Mark Peasant and this is Reese Stedman, and we've just finished practice 3. Quite an interesting session, except for the fact that obviously the first half an hour was spent raining.
Yes, quite a wet session that we had here today, but very interesting in the last half an hour with a lot of running being done by drivers on wets and intermediates.
Indeed. So we see the session finish with Charles Leclerc on top, half a second quicker than his rival Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. Then followed by Carlos Sainz of the Ferrari and Fernando Alonso in the Alpine, again showing this weekend that he's got a lot of pace still, in 4th in the Alpine.
Yes, very interesting to see how quick the Alpines have been throughout this weekend. Definitely showing quite a lot of pace. Will be very interesting to watch them in qualifying and in the race tomorrow.
Just to round up your top 10, so it's Sergio Perez in 5, Red Bull, Lance Stroll in 6th of the Aston Martin. Again, the Aston Martins also this weekend have been quite quick.
Yes, I'm hoping to see Sebastian Vettel have a good weekend, considering he was the last race winner here in 2019 at the last Singapore Grand Prix.
And the other Alpine of Esteban Ocon in 7th, Sebastian Vettel 8th, and George Russell, Mercedes, of which Mercedes, interestingly, this entire session, spent about 50 minutes of the session in the pits. They only came out in about the last 10 minutes to try and do some laps.
Yes, and they did not put in any impressive times for us to see. Clearly not doing very well in the rain here, which could show what will happen in qualifying later and in the race tomorrow if it does rain.
Exactly. So we've got George Russell in 9th, and then Daniel Ricciardo in the less improved, as it's not had anything done to it, in 10th, beating his teammate who's just had all of his upgrades put in for this weekend, that being Lando Norris. So Daniel Ricciardo's McLaren going faster around this practice session. So interesting to see that happen. Then rounding it up, Kevin Magnussen in 11 in the Haas, then Lewis Hamilton of the Mercedes in 12th.
Once again being outperformed by his teammate. So very interesting to see from Hamilton, who has still yet to win a race this season, the first season of his Formula 1 career not winning a race.
And unfortunately, I fail to see where he's going to get that win from.
In
13th, we had Pierre Gasly of the AlphaTauri, and then Mick Schumacher in 14th, and then the bottom 5 being relatively, bottom 5 were Yuki Tsunoda in 15th, the bottom 5 being relatively normal, except for the fact that Lando Norris of the McLaren in 16th was much slower than his teammate Daniel Ricciardo.
Yes, McLaren will be very disappointed with that, because they have put all of their new upgrades on Lando Norris's car, deciding not to upgrade Daniel Ricciardo for this weekend.
And rounding up the bottom 4 is obviously the 2 Williams and the 2 Alfa Romeos, Alexander Albon of the Williams at 17, the 2 Williams in the middle of Bottas and Zhou, and Goat TV at the end in 20th.
In his resident spot of 20th.
I believe we shall retire that spot 20th. We will let it be Latifi's forever. We'll go 19th to 21st from next year. But,
yes, very interesting session at least. Obviously a lot of talk going on about the alleged cost cap breach, allegedly being Red Bull and Aston Martin, but we will only find out next week Wednesday when the FIA release their official statement on their findings.
And the communication they have sent out so far is it's very
unknown at the moment, at least.
Uninformative, really.
Yes.
Because all it says is that there is an investigation going on, and pretty much that's it. We know that it's a budget cap investigation, and we know that they say they're going to give their say on Wednesday. Other than that, no information whatsoever. So we will only have to, unfortunately, wait for Wednesday, because I don't think you'll see any more information come out about that this weekend. So we'll just get to focus on the racing. So it does make for a very interesting qualifying session, because we did see now drivers go and practice on their intermediate wet tyres, which they reckon qualifying will see a bit of rain. So it will be an interesting qualifying, to say the least.
Well, we hope that we won't get washed out too much in qualifying, otherwise we will not be able to get too much running. But hopefully we have a similar session to now, where it starts drying up later in the session. Hopefully we'll even be able to get some dry tyre running in qualifying, hopefully qualifying 3.
100%. Well, what this does say is that the qualifying session and the race should be quite an interesting spectacle, I think.
Yes, with varying weather conditions.
The Red Bulls have not been on top, really. I mean, they've been with the pace, don't get me wrong. They've been with the pace, but they've not been the strongest car in the circuit.
Yes,
So,
Ferraris have seemed to be very strong this weekend. Definitely bringing their A game to try and stop Verstappen from winning the championship this weekend.
yes. Unfortunately, I think it's much of a we win the battle but lose the war, as it will be this weekend. Should Ferrari manage to take even a 1-2 spot, as it is only a matter of time for when Max Verstappen and Red Bull win both championships for the constructors and the drivers. But Singapore Grand Prix looking quite interesting for the qualifying session, and we will see you there. This has been Forever Motorsports. This is Mark Spies. Please do give us a like, a follow, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next session.
Hello and welcome to Forever F1 on Forever Sports. And today we're going to be talking about how you can watch the Formula One live without any worries about buffering or being taken down and stuff like that. So today we're going to be talking about how you can get access to that, and make sure that you never ever miss a moment of the 2022 Formula One season, which I think is going to be one of the best seasons we've seen in the last decade. It's already been a pretty scintillating first 2 races. We've got Australia this weekend. We will be live for a couple of watch-alongs over the season and stuff like that, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Now, the biggest question we get, because we've been doing a couple of live streams with live match time and live timings and live trackers, for example, is how can I watch the race? Now, the best way to consume Formula One is to actually subscribe to the Formula One TV Pro, which means that you get to live stream every single Formula One race, qualifying, practice, Formula 2, Formula 3, as well as the Porsche Super Cup. You can stream it all on Formula One TV Pro. You can also stream the onboard cameras for every single driver, so you can select each driver and you can watch it from the onboard cameras. You can listen to the team radios. So you get all access to all of that through Formula One TV Pro at just $5 a month or $45 for the year. Now, in comparison, you can get, for example, Forever One TV Access, where you can watch all the replays, but you can't watch any live content. Now, that is not available. So Formula One TV Pro is not available in a number of countries, including Spain, Germany, UK, Ireland, Japan, I think Qatar, Hong Kong, Australia. There are so many different countries where it's not available. However, you can then get access to that using a VPN, and we recommend ExpressVPN because we have tested it and stuff like that. It's the most reliable VPN when it comes to watching sport and streaming sport from around the world. So basically what you have to do, there is a step-by-step guide down in the comments below. But first things first, you've got to get an ExpressVPN subscription. We have got a special deal with them, so you can go and click on the link down in the description, and you've got to sign up for ExpressVPN. Once you've done that, you can then you turn on you select a server, for example, so you can connect to a USA server, a South Africa server, any server that is not listed in the countries where Formula One TV Pro is not available. And basically what that does is that it geolocates your computer or your device to that place. So it makes it seem as if you are currently sitting in the United States, for example, where Formula One TV Pro access is available. And you can then sign up for F1 TV Pro and watch every single second of every single session on a track, all the races across all the 4 different divisions, as I said, onboard cameras and stuff like that. It really is as simple as that. If you are trying to find a free stream, it is an illegal stream. There's always the chance it'll be taken down. There's always the chance that you can get in trouble for stuff like that. So I've always, I think that given the fact it's not that expensive, I really do encourage you to do it properly and make sure that you never have to worry. Every single race weekend, you are sorted. You know that you're going to have something. You know it's going to work. And that's what you can do. ExpressVPN, Formula One TV Pro, and you are away, and you can watch every single second of the 2022 season. As I said, the steps are down in the description, along with the links to ExpressVPN as well as to Formula One TV Pro. So go and check it out. Go and get yourself sorted and make sure you enjoy the rest of the Formula One season. Please do smash like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. And we'll chat to you guys all very soon.
Welcome back to the Singapore Grand Prix live stream from Forever Motorsports. We are here now waiting for the start of the Grand Prix. We have another 25 minutes until the formation lap starts. We are currently following Martin Brundle on the grid. Everyone has gone for their sighting laps. It is still quite wet out there. Sergio Perez saying that he does not believe it is ready just yet for intermediate. So we may see most of the cars starting on full wets for this race today.
Indeed. I was about to say, it was when Perez was being brought out on the track, he was on the radio and saying, I think the track is still quite wet for this tyre, and this tyre being the intermediate tyre. So, as I said, might well see everybody starting on wets today. Of course, they are allowed to do that.
Yes.
In the wet conditions, they are allowed to select their tyre according to intermediates and wets, whereas normally in dry conditions, you cannot. Once you have finished your...
whatever tyre you qualify on, that is your starting tyre. But obviously with the wet weather today, we are going to be starting on either intermediates or full wets. Let's see what teams gamble with the intermediates. Let's see what teams go on full wets for today.
I was about to say, I think what you will see is a lot of people trying to be secretive about what they try and do, because it is going to be a very interesting decision. With Formula One these days, you never know if Perez's little comments with regards to maybe for wets, he might well have just said that just to sort of convince other teams to look at that, rather than Red Bull basically saying
Lewis Hamilton double negative there.
Yes, exactly, one of those little tactical plays. Unfortunately, whenever you see Checo speak in press conferences or etc., I'm not sure he's got the intelligence for that, but we'll assume that he means well in that.
You have no faith in the Minister of Defence. But it should definitely be a very interesting race today with interchanging conditions. Hopefully we will get some dry running later in the race, which will be definitely very interesting to see which cars are most dominant in the dry conditions here in Singapore.
And yeah, we see some celebrities that are in the crowd. This
Will.i.am
looks to
at
be
the
Will.i.am.
moment. Yes, as well as Felipe Massa speaking to Martin Brundle at the moment. Yes. We still have another 13 minutes or so until the formation lap starts. We should be seeing the drivers making their way soon to the front of the grid for the national anthem.
But yes, just a little bit longer than 30 minutes actually, because it's at 5 past, of course, the formation lap. So it is actually a 22-ish minutes.
We'll see.
We'll see. Well, as we'll just commentate as it goes. So we'll see. It's about that sort of time as to when it'll go. And here we see Lewis Hamilton doing his usual thing, as on a scooter in the grid, whilst he's got his physiotherapist running up next to him.
Yes, Angela carrying his helmet as well as his balaclava, just getting ready to go to the grid.
Yes. The grid right now is absolutely jam-packed full of people. It's one of those usual. It's the big celebrities all out on track having conversations with everybody. It's the whole glamour of the Formula One right now.
Well, yes, as we've been saying, this is one of the most spectacular race weekends of the season. So I would definitely not be surprised to see a lot of celebrities out here today.
Yes, indeed. And we're now looking at the Ferrari car today. How do we reckon Ferrari fares today? Do we reckon they get their tactics right? Do we reckon it fares a good race for them? Or is this going to be something that's going to be
I think
it'll
they
be a
have to
disappointing
get it
day
right
again.
today. I think if they do not get it right in the next few races, Mattia Binotto, we will not be seeing him next year at all. But I think that they should have learned over the past few races. Well, we certainly hope so.
Yes. So, I mean, Ferrari have sort of started to improve in terms of getting their A into gear in the past couple of races. They have still got a bit of pit stop issues, as we have seen. But you know what? I reckon Ferrari is going to have quite a clean race today. I reckon because it's the weekend that Red Bull can potentially win the drivers' championship with Max.
They
Considering
need
Max
to
is
score as many points as they can this weekend to try close that deficit to Max.
exactly. And as I said in my prediction earlier, if you're still on stream, then I still reckon that somehow today the Ferraris are both going to finish on the podium.
Nice to see some more people joining our stream now. Thank you all for coming in. Please let us know in the comment section where you are tuning in from. As well as please do vote in our poll as to who do you think will take P1 today in the race.
Indeed. And currently we're looking at Fernando Alonso, who is chatting to Martin Brundle. Obviously, the drivers on the grid, they hate doing these interviews just before the race starts. You see them sprinting as soon as they see the press. They try to get past them and avoid having to speak because, they're trying to get their heads in the zone. And commentators like to disrupt that and have a chat because, it's all about the media sort of thing. So, it's lots of cameras out on the grid right now, lots of phones, lots of people. It's always just hectic on the grid as we go looking at the Merc there of Hamilton. How do you think Hamilton does well today?
Considering how we've seen the car behaving this weekend, I think he could do quite well, at least a top 5 position finish. I think Carlos Sainz will definitely put some pressure onto him, as Carlos Sainz will be right behind him on the grid, as we see Mick Schumacher currently speaking to Martin Brundle. Let's see what he has to say. Currently asking him about the water on track. Definitely thinks it's going to be a fun race today, saying it is a bit of a tricky condition at the moment, but definitely looking forward to it.
Yes, and as I say, we look at Mick Schumacher and the Haas's today, and we see Mick Schumacher starting up in 12th and
yes, being
Magnussen
promoted
in 9th.
by George Russell's grid drop.
And in case anybody is unaware as to why Russell, if you watched the qualifying yesterday, Russell had finished originally 12th, didn't make it into Q3 and finished 12th in the qualifying. But now he's starting in the pits for the start of the race. The reason for that is because Merc did badly in the Russell's car didn't do particularly well in the qualifying, so they decided they're going to change his power unit for the race today. So he's now taking a penalty in that, and he's now going to be starting in the pits. So that is why we've got George Russell starting up in the pits. But otherwise, everyone is in the positions that they qualified in, which is the first time in a while because we've been taking lots of penalties in these last few weeks. So first time we've actually got a grid that looks like what it was in qualifying. Says just except for George Russell, who drops down to the for a good penalty for putting in a new power unit. But as we say, the Haas's of Magnussen in 9th and Schumacher in 12th. So Haas doing a relatively decent showing in qualifying yesterday. Mick Schumacher only just missing out on Q3. Which was upsetting for him, I'm sure. But do we reckon Haas do the usual thing where they start further up the field and end further down again, or do we reckon they sort of hold their positions today?
Well, their car is not best suited to high downforce tracks, but they seem to have been performing quite well here this weekend. So hopefully that means that they have started to tune their car better for high downforce circuits. So I certainly hope to see them further up the grid this weekend.
Exactly. And Max Verstappen, I think he might well move up very quickly in the first lap.
Yes, definitely. As we have seen in previous races, he normally has a brilliant start. So we should see him making up a few positions, at least on the start.
But the interesting thing is I can't remember the last time we started a Formula 1 race in the wet, intermediate tyre or a wet tyre. So I wonder
I'm trying to think, Imola last year we had, but I'm sure we have had wet races this year.
This year, yes, but I don't think, as far as I can remember, and comments can help me here, but it's been a good while since we started a race in wet conditions. So that should have a very interesting outlook on how everything goes, because we haven't really seen that from these drivers start a race in the wet in these new cars. So if we see Max Verstappen have a very good start, are there other drivers that are going to, sort of suddenly spring out of nowhere and say, you know what, we've actually got a lot more grip than the other cars in the wet right now. So I'll be very interested to see how this does. I mean, Max should still get a very good start. He is a fantastic racer in terms of every aspect. There are very few things he's not particularly good at.
We actually did have a wet race start this year. We had Monaco was in the wet.
Yes, Monaco was in the wet.
Yes,
so
so
a very
we do
similar track
apologise
to Singapore in terms of the start. But the thing is, being Monaco, nobody really overtakes anyway. So it's not when we start a race in Monaco in the wet, it's pretty much you just keep going as it normally is.
As we currently have the national anthem being played here in Singapore under the lights.
Looks to be a large, I would say large, but it's a type of a cappella group, but it's not a cappella, if that makes sense.
They do have a big band behind them, as per usual with our
Yes.
Formula One national anthems.
Yes, everyone's standing too.
It says we have a lot more people now joining our stream. Great to see you all. Please let us know where you're tuning in from, as well as please do vote in our poll to let us know who you think will take the race win today.
And indeed, if you are looking to find a way of watching the Formula One live with us, do go and look at our channel and go and see how to see the Formula One live. You can see it in the description of this video as well. It'll go and give a whole description as to what you need to do and how you can do it. And you can watch along with us as well. So do go check that out in the link. Then you should go and be able to watch F1 live with us. As we just said, we are currently in the middle of the national anthem. Drivers all ready for the race. Everyone's looking calm. Max is looking a bit upset with life, if we must be honest. He looks obviously a little bit probably in game mode, as it says, but I think his facial expressions also show the fact that he's quite disappointed with the start today. I think he knows he's got a lot of work to do.
Yes, for sure. Just looking at Lewis Hamilton, I could not see if he had his nose stud in today, but he did get a fine from the FIA yesterday. He did say in the press conference, though, that he has to keep his nose stud in for medical reasons as he got an infection. But the FIA is still giving him a monetary fine for that, as it is now in the regulations that you're not allowed to wear any jewelry anymore, as well as piercings.
Yes.
Due to medical reasons for if you do have a crash and need to be defibrillated.
Exactly. So currently we just finished the national anthem and Lando Norris has been pulled in for an interview, so we're just going to try and listen to what he says.
Currently asking him about the weather today and how he thinks he will fare under that. Certainly sounds like he is looking forward to these conditions today, giving him a bit more of an opportunity with him starting further down the pack today.
So Lando Norris, they're saying basically earlier there in this little thing that he's actually seems to be faring his chances a little bit more with these sort of conditions. He thinks he can get a bit more pace than some other drivers with the wet. So he says it certainly will make for a more exciting race, which is not at all incorrect. And now let's listen to Max Verstappen.
Obviously, Max Verstappen starting down in 8th today on the grid due to his poor qualifying result yesterday, with Red Bull pulling him in at the last second because of low fuel, which meant that he would not have been able to have been scrutinized, so they pulled him in as he was about to finish his hot lap, which could have been 2.7 seconds up on the fastest lap.
Yes, indeed. And Max Verstappen, they're not giving away anything to the reporter at all. Basically, not really wanted to interview at all. Basically gave a one-sentence answer and walked off. So, yeah, I think he's very much game mode right now. Red Bull know that they've got a big task ahead of them for Max Verstappen. So we'll see how he fares today. I'm sure, obviously, the soon-to-be drivers championship
Yes.
winner will fare decently today, I'm sure.
Just looking in closely at his tires, it's pretty difficult to see, but it does look like there may be a set of green wall tires on Max Verstappen's car, which is interesting to see.
Yes, and we've got a comment here saying he's just waiting on the ferry to get from Dublin to France. Hopefully he gets to watch on the ship. Certainly hope that you do get to watch that, and do be sure to stay on our channel and let us know of your thoughts of the race if you do manage to watch. Otherwise, we will let you know exactly what's happening the whole time. So yes, just looking at the
Yes.
cars, in case everybody doesn't know, we've had a big delayed start. Of course, that's why we're not commentating the race right now.
And confirmation, just seeing there in the camera, just a small opening in the tyre blankets on Max Verstappen's car, showing the green wall tyres of the intermediates. So he will be starting the race on those inter tyres. Let's see what other people decide to start the race on, as Mark listens to Sergio Perez's commentary at the moment to the interview. Sergio Perez starting in second place on the grid today, right
Yeah.
behind Charles Leclerc.
Yeah, Sergio Perez also much similar to Max Verstappen, not really giving away anything at all. Pretty much just saying, yeah, we've got a tough race today. Just hope for a good start, and then we'll keep going. So, I think will be one of the more interesting races this race. I think, especially considering Max Verstappen starting down in eighth in a track that is so difficult to overtake. Not obviously as difficult as Monaco. Nothing quite compares to Monaco's difficulty in terms of overtaking, especially with the size of the cars these days. But, Singapore being a slightly wider street circuit, but still being a street circuit with a lot of turns, a lot of downforce areas, which suits the Ferrari, which suits the Merc a little bit more. So Red Bull will have a lot to do today in terms of trying to overtake. And so Max Verstappen, for all that, a lot of people are saying, he's going to win today. He's going to put in the work. It's going to be an exceptionally difficult task for him to get that done. So the only way we're going to see that happen is by multiple cars, ending up in the walls at the end of the day, and red flags and yellow flags and safety cars, etc., etc.
Well, you never know around here, as we saw back in, I think it was 2018 or 17, where the top three took themselves out in the first corner. Max Verstappen, Sebastian Vettel, and Kimi Raikkonen. So you never know what is going to happen here around the Singapore Grand Prix circuit.
Exactly, and I'll be seeing all these helmets now in the lights. It's actually fantastic to have a light race, because all of the splendor of Formula One is just sort of heightened when it's a night race, because you see these helmets that are specially made for the weekend. Lots of people are wearing new helmets, lots of there's a couple of new liveries from the McLaren.
Yes. Great to see those special helmets for this race weekend. Drivers obviously allowed now to change their helmets whenever they want to, whereas before, in the past, they were only allowed to have one special design helmet per season. Now they are allowed to have unlimited designs per season. So it is great to see with the night races having some cool, different looking helmets on the drivers. Just makes it a little bit difficult to tell which driver it is, but other than that, always great to see.
Exactly. So we're watching Hamilton just get into the car there. They're all getting ready. Toto Wolff was just on in an interview right now, and he is actually showing all smiles and looking quite happy ahead of this race. And I think that's probably because of Hamilton's performance yesterday and the fact that he was really keeping up with the times that people were putting in. Of course, we didn't see the Red Bull time of Max Verstappen go in, which supposedly was going to be about 2.7 seconds quicker than pole. But, the time difference between first and third was only 0.05 seconds in qualifying. So a really, really, really tight qualifying session. So I think Merck are quietly hoping that Hamilton can do some business today and get onto a podium. And perhaps, as we say, Hamilton has always finished the podium for the last...
Well, he's always won a race since he
Yes.
started his Formula One career, this year being the only year he has not won a race as of yet.
Yes.
So, could today be his day? We have a comment here from Shah F1 giving his support for Lewis Hamilton. Great to see you all commenting in our chat at the moment.
Yes. So we are now just waiting on the race. We are just about 8 minutes away from the start, from the formation lap. And after that, we will then be able to watch the race and actually get some action an hour later than we were hoping. But you know what? That's Singapore for you. It just adds a little bit to the drama, which is fantastic.
Yes, well, while we have a bit of a break in the stream at the moment, let's have a look at our poll at the moment for who will win the race. So at the moment we have 29% rooting for Charles Leclerc, 31% rooting for Lewis Hamilton, as well as 33% rooting for Max Verstappen today, with about 7% rooting for another driver to win the race here. Hopefully, possibly Sergio Perez.
Indeed. So, if you would like to give your predictions, if they're obviously not any of the top three, if you want to put down your predictions in terms of text, you can go and comment and go and say who you reckon is going to win today. As I say, my predictions is I reckon there will be 2 Ferraris on the podium along with a Red Bull. I'm assuming it's going to be the Red Bull of Perez. And Yes, after that, I reckon it will be an interesting call after that. Hamilton may well get onto to the podium as well, obviously. But I just do think that the Red Bull and the Ferrari car is just a little bit better than the Merc this season. So if it should play out with the cars wise, I think you'll see Hamilton unfortunately drop. But Hamilton, we know, is a fantastic racer, so we'll see how he fares this time round. So we are starting the race in the wet. So it's going to be very interesting tactically as to what teams do when they decide to pit, when they think it's dry enough. So we're going to have lots of estimations, assumptions, chatter on the radio to the teams, trying to decide what we do, when we do it. You'll see multiple stops this race. Won't be a one-stop race at all.
No, I don't think so. With the interchanging weather conditions, there is no more rain, at least for now, predicted. So we should hopefully late in the race see some dry weather tyres being run. Which would mean, obviously, we could, depending on what they start on, if they start on full wets or intermediates, we could have wet runners going into intermediates and then down onto dry tyres. So definitely should be a very interesting race ahead of us.
Yes, and of course this weekend very important because it's the first weekend that Max Verstappen could potentially win the Drivers' Championship. Lots needs to happen for that to happen, which is exceptionally unlikely, but it is now statistically possible for him to win it in each race that he races for this season. So if we don't see it this weekend, may well see it the following weekend. So yes.
Yes, we currently have 6 minutes, well, as the clock turns over, we have 5 minutes now until the formation lap will start. So very exciting now, ramping up until the start of the Formula One.
Yes, indeed. Somebody's saying, if Hamilton manages to take both in the opening corner, will he take the lead for the whole race? As I say, it comes down to the tactics for this weekend because they're all going to seem to be starting on intermediate tyres. Who's going to box first? Are they going to get more pace, less pace? Is somebody going to make a mistake in terms of going out in softs a little bit too early to try and take the risk to make sure they stay ahead? It's all going to be interesting in that regard.
Yes, I think what we could see is a lot of the lower down teams taking a bigger risk and stopping earlier in order to possibly get an advantage on fresh tyres.
Yes, and I think you'll hopefully see teams start to do some split strategies to get an idea. So what Hamilton does have in his locker, which is quite useful for Merc especially, is that they may well, considering Russell starting 20th, use him as the guinea pig for Hamilton's race. So they'll send Russell in as early as they can to see which tyres work better. And then as a result of that, they'll tell Hamilton, okay, you can come to the pits now, you can come to the pits later because George Russell is getting more pace.
Yes, that is obviously an advantage of having George Russell starting from near the back of the grid. They can put him on whatever strategy they feel that they want to test out with Lewis Hamilton, which could definitely help Lewis Hamilton further in the race.
Exactly. And, the thing is to say, Singapore always has a yellow flag, always has a safety car come out. We've always had that, and I'm sure we'll have that again today because of the weather especially. Likelihood of a crash in the first lap?
I think it is quite high here, especially with the wet conditions here today. It could make it very tricky into that first corner.
Yeah, so I think you'll likely see in the first corner you'll see some taps. Whether it'll be from the front row or not, we don't know because I'm sure all of them are thinking exactly about that sort of thing. They don't want to crash out in that first corner, so they're all going to make sure they try and keep their cars together. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
I think where you will see maybe a little bit of a crash, actually, it will be around Verstappen because I think he's going to think, I need to really push this first lap. I need to really get ahead of everybody so I can try and get myself into a decent position to challenge for the podiums today. So he's going to utilize the start as a means of trying to overtake as many people as you can because it's one of the few places that you can do it in this entire race is the very start.
Yes, I do believe though that Max Verstappen does need to be quite cautious today as he does not want to drop points further behind. He wants to try and extend that lead in the Drivers' Championship as much as possible, possibly even taking it today if he makes his way up into the podium positions.
Yes.
But then Leclerc would have to have a shocker of a race with him starting on pole at the moment.
Yes, indeed. So just to let you know how Max Verstappen can potentially win the race, the Drivers' Championship this weekend. So what has to happen is Max Verstappen has to finish first. That is the minimum. Has to finish first, and Charles Leclerc has to finish lower than 8th, and his teammate Sergio Perez has to finish lower than 4th in order for Max Verstappen to take the drivers' championship.
Yes,
So
Max needs to have a lead of at least 22 points over Charles Leclerc today if he wants to take the drivers' championship. I do not think that we will see that happening today, but possibly within the next race or the race after that.
yes, indeed. And Fernando Alonso, again, putting in some very, very quick times in qualifying yesterday, coming 5th on the grid. So how do you reckon he fares today? Do we reckon we see a DRS train? Well, we won't see a train necessarily early on because of the lack of DRS from the wet, but do you reckon a train will form behind Alonso, which if Max Verstappen doesn't take him in the first lap, he will fall into?
Yes, well, we've seen Fernando Alonso having great pace all weekend, so I'd actually think he may be fighting as well for the podium positions in the first few laps, putting some pressure on Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton, which will be very interesting to watch for
Indeed.
sure.
And of course, Fernando Alonso is now breaking the record for Formula One, starting his 250th race.
350th
race. I do
yes,
apologize.
breaking the all-time record from Kimi Raikkonen of 349.
So a very, very historic day for Fernando Alonso in his Alpine. But now all of the cars are getting ready. The people have been removed from track. We are currently doing the final preparations just for them to start their formation lap in just under
1
a little
minute.
bit. Teams are on the tires. They're removing blankets. I think they're about to get ready. They've just dropped the cars onto the grid. The
Let's
blankets
see
are
what
getting going.
tyres people have chosen to go on. Let's have a look at the Ferraris. Hopefully we will see those tyres very soon with mechanics starting to move away from these cars. So at the moment it looks like everyone so far, from what I can see, is on intermediate tyres, which I believe would be the correct choice for
Yes,
now,
indeed.
with the track drying up quite a lot before the start of the race.
100%. And now all of the crew have moved off to the sides. We have dry tyres on, well, intermediate tyres on, but the track is looking quite dry already. So I think you'll see these inters come off very, very soon.
Just
And
waiting for the start now of the formation lap. Should be any second as it goes green. Now we have the cars starting to move off of their grid positions.
Yes, we have movement on the track. We are about to get going with the Singapore race an hour later than we should have. But at least we've got some racing going now.
Yes, anything is better than a Spa repeat with no racing happening at all.
So
Track still looking quite wet with the intermediates on. Not as bad as we were seeing earlier on, but there is quite a lot of spray. That will be quite difficult in the first few laps, the amount of spray, especially for the people running near the end of the grid.
Exactly. So what you might well see is the fact that sectors 1 and sectors 3 will dry up very quickly, as it did yesterday. But sector 2 is the part that they're concerned about in terms of getting dry, because sector 2 is very exposed. So it's not as many buildings around it. It's not as good drainage around that sort of area. So sector 2 is quite usually wet and has more puddles, as we see Charles Leclerc entering sector 2 now.
Looks a lot better than what it was yesterday during qualifying, at least. So hopefully that means it will be drying up quite quickly.
Yes, and what is interesting is the amount of spray that's coming up from those cars is very little at the moment. There doesn't seem to be much spray at all.
There was a lot more in sector 1, so maybe that is an indication that we could get dry running possibly within the first 10 to 20 laps.
As I say, I think you'll see cars coming very early, because given everybody's going to be doing pace laps straight away, the track's going to dry up exceptionally quickly, and you're going to have a racing line that's going to be quite dry as well. So you'll see teams try and take risks and go on to softs early on. Well, not necessarily softs, but certainly a dry tyre early on.
As we have just seen a graphic showing the quickest pit stop of the season by Red Bull, 2.09 seconds, which was achieved in the Netherlands in Zandvoort. Brilliant from the Red Bull team there, always on top of their game with regards to pit stops.
Yes, always. So
We see
now
in the third sector it is quite wet still.
Yes, indeed. Nice thing is, though, is that the racing line seems to be a lot drier than some parts of the track. But you'll see, we see this sector of the track here, just heading into that bridge section. It seems to be quite wet.
Looks like it is still drizzling a little bit in that sector.
So we will hopefully have some dry tyres come out soon. But yes, that sector is looking particularly wet at the moment, as we see Charles Leclerc coming to the final corners of the track, just so we can get our start finish. And we see George Russell in the pits here, ready to do his pits start, as he took a penalty for his power unit rather, and so he will start from the pits.
We have 302,000 people currently spectating here at the Singapore Grand Prix throughout the weekend. That's a lot of people. We saw a lot more at the British Grand Prix earlier this year. Great to see full capacity crowds once again watching a Formula One race.
Indeed. And in case those of you are wanting to watch as well, please remember in the description of the video, we have a whole video explaining how you can watch Formula 1 live alongside with us. So do go and check that video out, and you can also watch the Formula 1 in case you do not have access to it. Yes, and we are now lining up on the grid, and we are about to get some racing going.
Currently have the top 6 in their grid positions, just waiting for the rest of the people to line up for the start of the race. With George Russell now leaving his pit box to start at the end of the pit lane.
Yes, and all the crowd have got their phones out. Lots of lights being shown as we see the final car
Of Nicholas
Latifi.
Latifi lining up in his favorite position of 20th.
Yes, and we are about to get going. Let's see how Hamilton fares. Let's see how Verstappen fares. Will Charles still be first after the first corner? Will Perez have a decent start? Will they not? Lights are going. 3, 4, 5. About to get racing underway.
And lights out in Singapore for the start of the Singapore Grand Prix. Sergio Perez getting a very good start with Hamilton as well, making gains on Carlos Sainz there. As Carlos Sainz and Hamilton touch into the first corner.
Each other, yes. And we see Perez is now first already. Charles Leclerc has already lost his place. A very poor start from him. Max Verstappen seems to be very far back in the pack. Something's definitely happened there. He seems to have dropped further back. And we see lots of spray being kicked up now. Currently, Perez, Charles Leclerc, Sainz, then Hamilton.
A lot of spray being kicked up that's going to make visibility very difficult here, which could increase the chances of a crash. Max Verstappen definitely dropping very far back on the grid at the moment, down into 11th place, dropping 3 positions as we see a car going off the track right now.
Alonso has lost his position to Lando Norris. He's also under pressure from behind him, Pierre Gasly. Aston Martin is currently trying to also look at Gasly's side there.
Somebody as Verstappen drops down to 12th position now. Definitely going to be a very difficult race for him today.
Indeed. It's a very, very, very bizarre start as Max tries to make up some more positions. He takes the
fighting
back.
With Kevin Magnussen at the moment, who has damage in his front wing. Kevin's just taking that position back and forcing Max Verstappen almost into the wall, being overtaken by McLaren now.
Max Verstappen having a terrible start to this race so far, as he's currently now battling with Ricciardo in 12th and 13th. Perez still on top. The 2 Ferraris behind him, then Hamilton, then Norris, then Alonso, Gasly, Vettel, Tsunoda, Stroll, Magnussen, and then Max Verstappen of the Red Bull in 12th after starting in 8th. Already lost 4 positions.
Still do not know which car that was that went off of track there, but hopefully we will see a replay soon and we will let you know.
It appears to be Albon that went off into the runoff zone. And we'll see that go through 4. Russell has already taken Albon, so it must have been Albon that went into the runoff area.
We have Nicholas Latifi making up a few positions, now into 17th place. Sergio Perez just eking out that gain on Charles Leclerc so far.
And Vettel having a brilliant start, having already taken 5 places. He's up from 12th into 8th.
Yes, our previous race winner here in 2019.
We are still going now. Lots of spray being kicked up as we start our second lap. Seems to be settling more right now.
Max Verstappen still trying to overtake Kevin Magnussen. Just talking on the team radio about Magnussen's loose end plate. He's gaining quite a lot on him and has overtaken him into turn 3 now, into the DRS zone, which is deactivated until the track dries up a bit more.
Perez already gaining a lead of just about a second over Leclerc. Leclerc got a...
As Verstappen is now going on an overtake. Yes, and has made it work over Lance Stroll into turn 4.
Yes, Max Verstappen, after having a terrible start, seems to be trying to fight back now. He's back into 10th. Still almost 15 seconds behind Perez, who's leading this race now from Leclerc, who did not have a fantastic start.
Yes, finally back up into the points positions. Let's have another look at this race start. Lights out. Sergio Perez not getting away perfectly in the first phase, but the second phase, that car just has so much more pace than the Ferrari.
Max had an absolutely terrible start. Looks like it almost was anti-stall, given the fact that he just did not move off the grid. Everybody just going straight past him as he went.
Yes, and having to cut the corner there in order not to crash into other cars, as we have an onboard of Lewis Hamilton. Let's see why he made contact here with Carlos Sainz.
Carlos Sainz having a brilliant start.
Hamilton trying to go around the outside of Sainz, but Sainz just pushing him a bit wide there, slightly touching. Luckily, not causing too much damage for the two of them.
So a very interesting start as we follow Max Verstappen and his start. Yes,
Yes,
indeed.
just falling into anti-stall there, making him drop so many positions at the start, losing at least 3, 4, 5 positions.
So it really has been a rather difficult weekend for Max Verstappen so far as he starts the race in 8th and then goes and slips into anti-stall and drops a further 5 places down. He has already made 2 of those places up again, but not a fantastic start by Max Verstappen by any means. Sergio Perez has a brilliant start on the other hand, taking Leclerc very easily in that first corner, not even having to go side by side in the first corner, just going straight into his racing line and taking and leading this race.
Sergio Perez now almost with a full second ahead, 0.9 at the moment ahead of Leclerc, with Carlos Sainz 4.4 seconds off of the 2 race leaders at the moment. Hamilton on the radio saying, I told you about these tyres. In future, you need to listen to me. No grip. So he clearly wanted to start on full wets. No one else at the moment complaining about these tyres, just Hamilton right now.
Indeed, Hamilton complaining about the tyres. Unfortunately, nobody else seems to be having an issue with it. Look, he might well have got a bit more grip in certain areas. We don't know if that is indeed the correct tyre, but what you will not see is nobody's going to go into the pits for wets now, as the track is only going to get drier. So it was a risk you had to take at the beginning.
Now fighting for 9th position on Yuki Tsunoda, hopefully going to get him here in this hairpin. If not, then into the next braking zone.
As Verstappen moving through the field now as he tries to take Tsunoda on this strong straight here.
Yes, as he has a good run into this corner. Yes, and he takes him into the braking zone.
Yes, Max Verstappen very quickly moving through this field as he moves into 9th again, almost back to where he was, but having to make up a bit of time now to catch Vettel, who had a fantastic start, as we said, gaining 5 places.
Very exciting start from this Grand Prix so far. Let's see how it pans out with these drying tracks.
Leclerc still sticking with Perez in the lead with about a second gap, but Sainz falling away and Hamilton as well. So you're seeing that the front two, being the Red Bull of Perez and Leclerc's Ferrari, do seem to be pulling away from the pack a little bit.
As we follow an onboard of Kevin Magnussen showing how he broke his front wing end plate.
Yes, Magnussen there having to go off the track a bit to avoid collisions.
Just showing from this driver's perspective how difficult it is to see at this track at the moment with all the water being thrown up by these cars. Still has not come in to replace his front wing, showing that he's clearly not losing too much downforce. Another onboard of Alexander Albon, showing how he lost it into the one corner, hitting the wall with his rear. Hopefully not causing too much damage on the rear wing or with the gearbox.
No damage seems to have been caused.
He is, though, 35 seconds at the moment behind the race leader. Charles Leclerc still 0.992 behind Sergio Perez for first.
So what was very interesting here is that the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc is sticking with Perez quite well, within about a second's gap, but Sainz is falling away quite quickly and is going to start forming a gap between the front two. So Sainz will want to try and lessen that gap as quickly as possible, because even Hamilton is now going to start trying to gain some time on Sainz, but he's also got a small gap there. So the front two forerunners of the race, being Perez and Leclerc, really are starting to build up quite a lead already.
Yes, with another big gap forming between Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris, about a 4-second gap between those two drivers.
Interesting enough, though, Alonso is keeping pace quite well, about 2.5 seconds ahead of Gasly, who's then ahead of Vettel, and then Max Verstappen in 9th currently. So an interesting
with
race
Alonso
start.
losing 1 place on the race start, dropped down to 6th from his starting position of 5th.
And we do see that Russell is starting to make his way through the field, as he should be taking Latifi in the next lap, as he does just take Latifi now. He's moved up into 17th after starting in the pits. Next up in his sights will be Valtteri Bottas.
Sergio Perez now increasing his gap on Charles Leclerc to 1.3 seconds. The Red Bull of Sergio Perez showing its dominance here in the opening phase of this Grand Prix.
And we're looking through the grid right now. In case anyone does not know the positions, we've got Perez first, Leclerc second, Sainz in third, Hamilton fourth, Norris fifth, Alonso sixth, Gasly seventh, Vettel 8th, Verstappen 9th, Yuki Tsunoda 10th, and then the rest of the field, with Russell currently relaxing in 17th, quickly moving through the field as he keeps decreasing the time between him and the next driver consistently through each corner. So that Merc is showing a bit of dominance in the lower half of the field. We'll see where Russell ends up in this race, because it will be quite interesting to watch and see how his new power unit fares.
Yes, the Red Bull of Max Verstappen currently closing the gap to Sebastian Vettel, the last race winner here in Singapore. About 0.8 seconds at the moment between those two drivers. Let's see how long it takes for Max to clear Sebastian Vettel. It is quite critical now for him to start making his way through the pack before the track dries out too much and we have our first pit stops of the race.
I'm surprised Hamilton would be complaining about grip right now, because considering, I agree to his grip for certain wetter sections of the track, but there are quite a few sections of the track which are exceptionally dry, and if you run the wet tire, then you run the risk of overheating your tires dramatically in those dry sections, which as a result would then make those wet tires more or less, lose their grip as well. So I definitely think the intermediates were the correct tire to go out on, but what you are seeing is that most of this track actually seems to be dry, except for a couple of small sections which are
Mostly
still a
in the
bit damp.
third sector, it is looking quite wet, with Max Verstappen really closing that gap now on Sebastian Vettel, just to about 0.4 seconds between the two of them. As Charles Leclerc has now set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix with a 2 minute dead.
So yeah, Charles Leclerc slowly getting that gap back on Perez, but Perez more or less keeping that gap at about 1.2, 1.3 seconds. So Perez right now running in first and doing it nicely as we watch Max Verstappen and Vettel start their battle for 8th. Max Verstappen very quickly gaining time
Much
on
neater
Sebastian
through that
Vettel.
section from Verstappen, just showing how much more grip that car has. About half a second between these two drivers right now. Let's see if Max can close that gap now down the main straight of Singapore. Visibility is still quite hard at the moment, with a lot of spray being thrown up by these cars. As Lando Norris is currently on the radio, which he says, as you can tell, it's not drying up very quickly, so clearly not ready for dry tires just yet.
Indeed. So I think it's just the one section of the track. It's that last sector of the track that actually seems to be wet, which is a bit bizarre considering yesterday the first and third sectors dried up very quickly, and the second sector is what took for a while to start drying up. Whereas today we're seeing the first and second sectors being relatively okay, and the third sector being quite wet. And like when we say quite wet, it is very wet in that third sector. So we're going to have to see whether or not we're going to see these tires change in the next 15 laps or not. But at the moment, Lando Norris is saying that it's not drying up very quick at all.
At the moment, we have Daniel Ricciardo down in 13th position, fighting Magnussen with about 0.6 seconds between the two of them.
And just behind Ricciardo is Mick Schumacher in the Haas as well, in 14th, who obviously just dropped a few places as well as Magnussen. Magnussen starting in 9th, Mick Schumacher starting in 12th. Mick Schumacher has lost 2 places whilst Magnussen 3. So we'll see how those two Haas's fare now.
Sebastian Vettel making it very difficult for Max Verstappen to pass, as he is currently catching Pierre Gasly himself. So they are all currently fighting, 3-way fight for 7th place right now. Very interesting indeed to watch.
Yes, this race has so far been a great joy to watch, especially with Max Verstappen having a rather terrible start in that he fell into anti-stall as the race began, but then has quickly started making up his places and now battling for the position he started in. As he comes down the main straight, we know how quick the Red Bulls are in these straights. He's not making any move yet. There's a black and orange flag for Magnussen.
Yes, that means he now has to come into the pits to replace that damaged front wing. Stewards deeming it unsafe for him to carry on racing in that manner right now.
And unfortunately, that's going to really ruin Magnussen's race, because he's going to come into the pits and he's going to keep the intermediate tyres on, because there's no reason to be changing from those tyres right now. So he's just going to lose time. He can't take an advantage of trying to see if he can swap tyres. But yes, that'll be disappointing for Magnussen.
Yes, for sure, as he has been performing quite well this weekend, dropping a few places, unfortunately, as we seem to have a yellow flag.
Well, we're still racing here. There's a yellow flag in Sector 1.
So
Might well have been somebody going up to a runoff area.
looks like we have Guan Yu Zhou stopped on track. Yes, he is
Zhou
completely stopped on track. Let's see if he has his tyres looking very dirty. They possibly having hit the wall. I don't see any big damage to his car as of yet.
But it is
With
definitely a yellow
Nicholas
flag. It's
Latifi
a-
with a back left rear puncture on his car. So
may
this
well have
could
been
cause a
collision
safety
between the
car.
two of them.
This
This-
could definitely be a safety car now.
Well, Latifi's going to try and make his way back to the pits on a punctured left tyre. I think it must have been a collision between Zhou and Latifi because Latifi's got damaged and Zhou is in the wall.
Yes,
Well, not
and
quite
they were
in the
running
wall, but-
quite closely together with Guan Yu Zhou now taking his steering wheel off the car. That is his race over for today.
And that
Very
should
unfortunate
cause
for him.
a safety car to come out now.
Well, luckily he has put himself right by a
May well be a
marshal.
virtual safety car at least. But he is right by the corner. We're looking at Zhou Guan Yu's family, not looking particularly happy with life, of course, with Guan Yu Zhou now ending his race early in the 8th lap of Singapore. As we now see a replay as to what happened. Indeed, it was Latifi and Zhou who were going at it. Zhou was trying to overtake Latifi.
Latifi just pushing him wide and into the wall. That is very dirty from...
Latifi causing an incident, completely ruining Zhou's suspension.
Yeah, completely breaking Guan Yu Zhou's front right wheel and suspension, which means he is out of this
And
race.
Zhou very explicitly saying that Latifi was not driving correctly at all, and Latifi definitely at fault there.
Yes, we may see some penalties coming Nicholas Latifi's way here. As we see Kevin Magnussen now in the pits having that front wing changed, as well as a new set of intermediate tyres being put on. That could give him a bit of an advantage with some new rubber.
Yes, unfortunately, he has lost out a lot of time because of the change in the pits.
Yes, with a 39.2 second pit stop, obviously being a lot slower with his front wing being replaced.
Well, 39 seconds at least in the pits. As we follow, the safety car has been brought out
Yes.
onto the track, so a safety
This
car is out.
Not very good news for Sergio Perez, but could be very good news for the likes of Max Verstappen, Daniel Ricciardo, as well as some other drivers who were racing very closely here.
Indeed. Perez will be quite upset about that. It was just starting to get a bit of a gap between himself and Leclerc.
As we now see the safety car leaving the pit lane to hopefully collect the race leaders.
Yes, I think a very early catch here at least because, yeah, we should see the race leaders coming round into the final straight now.
We
so
see
they'll
Nicholas
catch it early.
Latifi coming into the pits to have his front wing replaced as it is quite heavily damaged. No end plate at all on his left side of the front wing. That was quite a bad move from Nicholas Latifi there, just completely pinching Guan Yu Zhou into the wall there. I definitely expect to see him having some penalties being applied.
I was about to say, unfortunately, this is the reason why we're seeing Latifi.
It looks like they are retiring his car as his left rear suspension is broken. That is as well the end of Nicholas Latifi's race today.
Yes, Latifi unfortunately causing a collision, and as a result of karma, is also going to be out of this race.
Yes, Fernando Alonso's favorite line, karma.
Yes. So we're currently under safety car in lap 9 as a result of Latifi and Zhou colliding. Zhou was attempting to overtake Latifi, and Latifi pushes Zhou into the wall. I still actually have no idea what Latifi's thinking in terms of giving Zhou literally no space. Zhou's going around the outside, can't do anything as Latifi just literally goes into the wall and collides both their cars, taking both of them now out of this race.
I would not be surprised if we see some penalty points coming the way of Nicholas Latifi, as well as possibly a penalty for the next race.
Indeed. As I say, it was a hideously stupid maneuver from Latifi. Who this has benefited massively is Kevin Magnussen, who just had to come to the pits to get his front wing changed as a result of damage, and the safety car came in literally as he's exiting the pits, which means that he should hopefully catch the safety car queue and then get racing again and hopefully move himself through the field. Otherwise, his race was looking like it was going to be a bit of a unfortunate one. So he's going to be smiling right now as he's on the new fresh pair of intermediates.
Who else will be smiling at the moment will be Lewis Hamilton, as he is now able to close that gap to Carlos Sainz and hopefully fight his way into the top 3.
Indeed. And now hopefully as we're going to have a safety car restart, we're going to hopefully see... as we see Valtteri Bottas and Russell going off into the runoff area as he's currently evidently locks up crash. And they do hit each other quite nicely in the front wing of Valtteri Bottas's Alpha.
Luckily with these new cars, the front wings being much more robust, not seeing too much damage, just a bit of flexing from Valtteri Bottas's wing there. Bottas obviously being the last person to drive that car of George Russell's.
Yes,
There
George
is a
Russell.
bit of a history between these two, obviously taking each other out in Imola.
Yeah, Russell unfortunately locking up there in his overtake attempt of Valtteri Bottas, and as a result goes into Bottas. He tries to turn in. So Russell has lost that position to Bottas. Luckily, again, he'll have that attempt again because under the safety car conditions, he will be able to just get going once more. So, safety car in. We're about to start lap 10 under the safety car. So, the entire field is going to be packed up, nice and close together, and we'll have some racing again, and we'll have a very exciting restart, I'm sure. With, I assume and hope that Perez will keep his position up in first, as he did very well to get himself there and then start building a gap. All depends on how he manages to restart with Leclerc behind him.
Leclerc will definitely be smiling now as that 1 second gap is now closed between him and Sergio Perez. He can now have another shot at first position for this race, as we see Max Verstappen in the distance, still behind the car of Sebastian Vettel.
Yes, and indeed, the person who's also probably very happy about this is Carlos Sainz, who was really dropping off the front pair in terms of time. So he's now right up against them as well. So he's going to hopefully utilize that position under the safety car restart. And safety car is now ending this lap. But they have just passed the start-finish straight, so it will be a fair while before we get going, as they're starting to. They're still in Sector 1, so we will see some more racing again. So two cars out, Zhou and Latifi.
Yes, we are now on our 10th lap of this race, so still another 51 laps to go until the end of the Singapore Grand Prix. So still a lot can happen in that time, as we see an onboard of Bert Mailander, the safety car driver, with the most powerful cars all packed up behind him in a very expensive traffic jam.
Well, so and unfortunately, it is quite a scary thing to be in that safety car, because for all of these F1 drivers in their cars right now are relaxing. They're going, oh, this is very slow. This is very slow. What you don't realize is in the safety car, they are almost driving at like the absolute max to get around these tracks. And whilst the Formula One cars are just relaxing behind them, so your Formula One driver, your safety car driver, has got to be concentrating so hard, because not only is he keeping them behind him, he is pretty much having to keep a pace that is pushing his current car to the absolute max, which means that he is at risk of obviously crashing into the wall, as we have seen once in the past with the safety car crashing. So you have to actually admire these safety car drivers, because for all that you think, they're going slowly, they are driving their cars to the absolute max as they go around this track.
Yes, we currently see the safety car disappearing off into the distance as Sergio Perez is starting to back up the pack. This will be a very interesting safety car restart. I am expecting to see a few overtakes coming in the next few laps, if not a few crashes happening at the safety car restart.
And Perez now bunching the pack up as he gets ready for the restart.
Coming into the last few corners.
Unfortunately, being first in this is going to be a bit of a difficult restart, because of course you have to maintain pace until the green light goes, whereas the car behind him just has to stay within his head. And the track is green, and we now have racing as Sergio Perez gets going. And we are racing again. He gets a good start. He gets away from Leclerc quite well.
Already pulling a bit of a gap on Charles Leclerc, as Sainz and Hamilton are quite close, but not close enough into the first corner.
Watching Max Verstappen here, he's looking at Sebastian Vettel. He's still a bit close to Sebastian Vettel. Should hopefully take him this lap, as he is very close together. Hamilton there was complaining just before the start of the restart, because he thought that Perez had started pulling away, and when in fact he had not. He was just simply burning some rubber. So Hamilton's still there, fourth. He's close to Sainz. Sainz already having lost a bit of time to the front pair again. Didn't get as good a restart as he was hoping.
Max Verstappen now having overtaken Sebastian Vettel into turn 3, now into turn 4, putting some pressure on Pierre Gasly.
So yes, Max Verstappen after 11 laps returns his position. He goes back to his position rather in 8th, where he started the race. Obviously, before he had a terrible restart, start of the race where he hits
into anti-stall.
Yes.
Putting some pressure now on Pierre Gasly. You can just see how Max takes much tighter lines, showing he has much more grip over that AlphaTauri in front of him. Just breathing down Pierre Gasly's neck right now into the hairpin and taking him into the hairpin. That is a very unlikely overtaking place, but has made that move stick and is now up into 7th position. Next driver that he has to catch is 2.8 seconds now ahead of him, and that is Fernando Alonso, who will not make that overtake very easy.
No, and what you are seeing now is Perez is starting to build that gap up again against Leclerc. He's doing very well at the front, Perez, right now. He's running a fantastic race in terms of his own little strategy there. So he's enjoying his race so far, but
looks like it is starting to rain again into that third sector.
Yes, as I say,
Max
weather
Verstappen.
looking interesting now. May well actually see an increase in rain again, which we were sort of hoping we wouldn't see. But most of the track seems to be still drying out, so hopefully we'll stay as it is right now.
Fernando Alonso currently putting some pressure on Lando Norris.
Yes, Fernando Alonso still sitting in 6th right now, so he did just lose his place to Lando Norris in the beginning, but still there and thereabouts and keeping his time quite well up. But now he has to be worried because now he's got Max Verstappen on his tail. So Max Verstappen will be coming towards Alonso, and I think Max Verstappen is moving through this field very quickly, and so far that safety car has obviously helped him a big time in trying to get his places back and bunching that field up so that he can consistently overtake a bit quicker as we go through.
Yes, for sure, as Lando Norris and Fernando Alonso's gap between the two of them is 0.9 seconds at the moment, just under 1 second right now, with Max Verstappen catching them very quickly. Top 3 at the moment still staying the same from around lap 1, with Sergio Perez leading the race, Charles Leclerc close in touch with Sergio Perez, and Carlos Sainz just a bit behind Charles Leclerc, about 2 seconds for Sainz behind the race leader, with Leclerc just at the moment closing the gap under a second right now.
Now, Mick Schumacher still catching Ricciardo as well. So Mick Schumacher, Ricciardo, and Stroll also having a bit of a little bit of a race in the middle of the field there as well, as Max Verstappen has got his gap under a second to Alonso.
This could be a very interesting battle for 5th position here today. We're still obviously running on wet weather tyres at the moment, so still waiting for this track to dry up quite a bit until we can get dry weather tyres on the cars, which will see the true potential of all of these cars being unlocked here.
Indeed.
As Sergio Perez now puts in the fastest lap, and we see Fernando Alonso having a bit of a moment into the penultimate corner there, letting Max Verstappen just catch him that little bit more. Max Verstappen now with a half a second gap to Fernando Alonso.
Yes, I think you might well see Verstappen take Alonso this lap, as he's really gaining time on him as well, and getting very close to Alonso's car. Norris building a little bit of a gap to Alonso.
Sergio Perez still keeping that gap to Charles Leclerc at about 1.1 seconds, driving brilliantly here in the wet today.
Hamilton's also now trying to gain time on Sainz again within a second.
Yes, let's see if we can get Hamilton up into the top 3. That would be very good for Lewis Hamilton, as well as his confidence here this season. Mercedes just seeming to get their car right for this race this weekend. Great to see them fighting for the podium positions once again. Max Verstappen breathing down Fernando Alonso's neck now. Let's see if he can repeat his overtaking move into that hairpin chicane.
We're following that now, and Max Verstappen's not going to really get close enough this lap. I don't think he'll have to make it.
Just falling behind a little bit right now.
Yeah, he's going to have to try and make his maneuver in the next couple of laps. Also, what we won't forget is that we've still got lots of racing to do. 61 laps in Singapore, and only 13 have been passed. So there's still lots of time for Max to get up there. But what he doesn't want to do is allow the front runners to gain a bigger gap on himself. So we want to try and get past these people that hold him up, so that he can get further towards the top of the field.
Yes, with Fernando Alonso and Max Verstappen currently scrapping it out for 6th position, it is allowing Lando Norris just to eke away from the two of them, with a 2-second gap now to Alonso from Norris.
Yes, as I say, so Max Verstappen currently being held up by Alonso's defensive maneuvers. So, as we say, each time that Max Verstappen has to overtake someone, he doesn't want to spend too long behind them, because otherwise he does lose a lot of time to everybody else. So he'll want to try and get ahead of Alonso as quickly as possible.
Yes, coming down the start-finish straight now into turn 1 and 2, just making their way to the next DRS zone. Max Verstappen right on Fernando Alonso. 0.6 seconds between the two of them right now.
Yes, and we have already had 252 votes on the live chat as to who we think is going to win this Grand Prix. It is Leclerc, Hamilton, and Verstappen, almost all at the exact same percentages as Leclerc is winning with 33%. Interestingly enough, though, I start to see that other races that are being is increasing. I imagine that will be Sergio Perez, if you guys do see him in first and gaining quite a good lead on the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. So. Yeah, I think if everything goes according to plan with Red Bull, I think you will see Perez probably finish the race in pole position.
Yes, which is once again brilliant for Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship. Obviously doesn't make too much of a difference to them with the Drivers' Championship, but it could allow Sergio Perez to secure that second position in the Drivers' Championship for this year.
Red Bull really looking for a clean slate in terms of points this season. If they can try and win the Drivers' Championship and the Constructors' Championship with their second driver coming in second, would mean that every single possible position they can get in this season, they pretty much get. So, yeah, looking for a lot of dominance here.
Max Verstappen slowly falling behind Alonso now, 0.6 seconds splitting the two of them. Max Verstappen possibly just trying to cool down his tyres a bit, build up some ERS energy in order to fight back on Fernando Alonso in the straights. We just see how he is able to close that gap in the tight corners. Alonso's car obviously not as strong. We see now the gap between Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc, 1.4 seconds between the two of them, with 5 seconds to Carlos Sainz between the race leader.
Yes, I think right now the Ferraris are really hoping they can try and get onto some slick tyres as well, because that would suit them a lot better right now. As in the wets, they can't make use of their downforce as much as the Red Bulls. Against the Red Bulls rather. So I think that the quicker this track dries up, I think you'll start to see the Ferraris get a little bit happy about life, so they can try and gain time to Sergio Perez. But of course, we know how quick this Red Bull is. So even if the Ferrari does manage to gain some time with all these downforce areas and on their softer compound tire, I think you will still see a Perez good races from Perez. Let's put it that way. So.
We see Max Verstappen now right on the tail yet again on Fernando Alonso, getting very close this lap, hopefully being able to make that overtaking maneuver on Fernando Alonso. But we know how difficult Fernando Alonso makes it for Max Verstappen, the wily old fox, at 41 years old, making his 350th race start this weekend. A record-breaking race start for Fernando Alonso, the now most experienced Formula One driver on the grid and of all time.
Yes, and whilst we look at all of this happen as well, I'm also noticing that it's only really one small section of the track that is now actually dry. That's wet rather. So I think you might start hearing some of these radio messages to drivers saying, how are the conditions? Are we ready to move on? Because it's only this section of the track, but the racing line itself seems to be drying.
Carlos Sainz now on the team radio. Hamilton, though, slowly closing that gap to Carlos Sainz, hopefully making his way into the podium positions. I'm sure he will be pushing as hard as he can to make those positions up. Still a lot of spray that we're seeing down the main straight, as Max Verstappen still not able to make any gains on Fernando Alonso.
Yeah, so right now, currently in lap 16 of 61, in case you guys have missed it, Zhou and Latifi had a collision at around the 9th lap, 10th lap, which then took both of them out of the race and caused a safety car. And under the safety car restart, that sort of really favored Max Verstappen, who had a terrible start going into anti-stall. And now sitting comfortably in 7th, so having gained a place overall in the race, and now being held up by Alonso a lot, because Alonso is now almost 3 seconds behind Norris, who was also challenging for 5th with Norris. So his defense of Verstappen really cost him some time.
Lando Norris now being told on the radio to try and make these inters last as long as possible, so trying to do the biggest stint as possible on their intermediate tyres before they change over possibly onto slicks. Max Verstappen yet again 0.5 seconds behind Fernando Alonso, just changing his line up into that hairpin corner to try get some more top end speed down that main straight. Still not able to close that gap any more than he is currently.
Yes,
George Russell and Valtteri Bottas at the moment fighting it out for 15th position. Clearly a bitter fight between those two
Yes.
rivals.
Yes,
One
Russell-
obviously replacing the other for that Mercedes seat.
And also Russell earlier locking up and hitting Bottas as he was going into, I think it was the
Turn
first
four.
turn four. Yes, turn four was. So also they've already literally rubbed shoulders this race, and Russell now attempting to get closer to Bottas as he goes. I'm surprised it's taken him this long to get closer to him again. As we listen to Norris.
Just talking about the dry areas on track at the moment, certain areas drying up faster than others, possibly overheating those green walled intermediate tyres, as we see Sergio Perez just extending his gap that little bit more on Charles Leclerc. It is now up to 1.6 seconds now on Charles Leclerc.
Yes, as we say, now starts coming the interesting tactical points in this race, because now teams are starting to look at the track and saying, you know what, the racing line is dry. There are a couple of wet patches, but it's not enough to cause too much issue to the slick tires. They're thinking perhaps, slick tires in the next few laps. But the issues that the drivers are now saying, because of course you want to make these intermediate tires last as long as possible as well, before they start losing pace, because otherwise you're going to have to do another stop in a position where you don't ever want to do it. So currently Norris is on the lines basically saying, I realize you guys want to keep these intermediate tires on for as long as possible, but there's a lot of dry parts of the track that these intermediate tires are not coping with. So
as we now have Lance Stroll catching Yuki Tsunoda for 10th position on the grid right now. Yuki Tsunoda racing for AlphaTauri, not having his best race of the season, but certainly doing well at the moment in the points. Sebastian Vettel having fallen down now to 9th position, still great considering his starting position in this race.
Indeed. So currently looking at this race again, we've got Sergio Perez on top, the two Ferraris following him in. Hamilton 4th, Norris 5th, Alonso 6th, Verstappen in 7th. Still can't get past Alonso, which is quite interesting there. But the Ferrari mechanics are all having chats in the garage right now. So I think we're starting to see some movement in the garages. Maybe perhaps see
possibly
some
getting
pit
ready
stops.
for some slick tires, which would make it very interesting for sure. As we see how close Valtteri Bottas and George Russell are, just within touching distance between the two of them, as we get a radio message from Carlos Sainz saying not far from slicks now. That is very, very good news to hear.
Yes, so clearly drivers are feeling that this track is dry enough to start thinking about it, and that should favour. As I said, now it becomes who's going to be the guinea pig again. I think Merck would surely use Russell and say, Russell, you're going to be our towel factor for this. And as we do see, Russell going
quite a bit
quite
offline
a bit off
there.
right there. He was taking quite an interesting line, but I think
We
all
still
of the big
see-
teams will try and notice and see whether Merck use Russell as a guinea pig.
Yes, we still see all of the Red Bull mechanics sitting in the pit lane, not ready as of yet for a pit stop, but I'm sure we will see people jumping as we have a radio message from Max Verstappen. Did you catch what he said?
So they asked about the conditions out on the track, and Max Verstappen saying stick to the current tyre basically at the moment. So they're not looking to change off this tyre anytime soon. But the
Verstappen
Ferraris are
still-
talking about it, so it's an interesting debate that we're going to have, because science reckons that we're not far off, and Verstappen's saying no, stick to this tyre. So now it's going to be interesting, as we say, as to who chooses which tyre to go forward.
Yes, as we currently have 105 people tuned into our stream. Thank you very much for joining us today in Singapore. Please do drop us a comment and a like on our video, as well as please do look in the link in the description if you want to watch the Formula One live. There is a video to show you how to do that. Please let us know though in the description where you are tuning in from. We would love to know.
Yes, and what is interesting also is that these lap times are permanently getting quicker and quicker and quicker, as Perez is now putting 1:58 in, when we were chilling at about 2 minutes and over. So we are starting to see these cars go around quicker on this track. So as a result, you're starting to see Ferrari also wipe away water from the pit lane. I
Yes,
think
so
that's also in
definitely
preparation
getting
for
ready.
some pits. Yes.
Yeah, that is definitely a big indicator that they are going to be stopping very soon, that they are clearing water from their pit box, just getting that little bit extra, possibly of pace, but releasing their car from the pit box. I cannot remember if it was a rule that was brought in that you're not allowed to use. Oh no, it was not that you were not allowed to wipe water, where you're not allowed to use your heat guns to dry your pit box.
Yes.
Just to give you that little bit of advantage, as we see Max Verstappen now right on the tail of Fernando Alonso, hopefully able to make a overtake soon for 6th position. 0.5 seconds splitting the two of those drivers.
Yes, Alonso really, really holding up Max Verstappen as we see the gap from Alonso to Norris just permanently growing as we go. And we're seeing the average time for pit stops lost is about 28 seconds. So it will be interesting to see which teams decide to take the risk first and change into slicks.
We currently see the gap between Max Verstappen and the leader, Sergio Perez, is 23 seconds. That is quite a big gap that Verstappen will have to make up if he does want to take the championship here in Singapore today.
Yes, indeed. Looking at this track now, you have to start thinking that the smaller teams will start also thinking about coming in for slicks, etc. Because there's not much for them to risk. Magnussen right now and Albon, you're thinking, well, the likelihood of you guys managing to make up 9 places to get into the points, it's unlikely. So you'll start to think, well, we'll take the risk. We'll go into slicks. We'll go and see how the slicks are doing, and see if we can sort of get some good time going, because it would suit them, of course, to just try and gain as much time as possible, because the lower pack is actually still more or less all together. There's not too much time between them, 0.8, 1.4, 2. So they mean
the top 10 are still all within touching distance of each other, obviously with the exception of Magnussen and Alex Albon, who both have had not the greatest race today. Max
Yes.
Verstappen complaining on the team radio, saying that there's lag with his upshifts. Hopefully they are able to fix that with the software.
Yes, and Perez right now got a 2.3 gap to Leclerc, but Sainz is the one who seems to be slow at 10 seconds behind Leclerc. So Perez and Leclerc are really pulling away, whilst Sainz and Hamilton are sticking together. And then, so we've got more or less we've got a few groups. We've got Perez and Leclerc together. You've got Sainz and Hamilton who are together. And you've got Norris, Alonso, and Verstappen who are all together. But Norris and Alonso, the gap from Alonso to Norris is slowly building as it keeps going, because as a result of his defense of Max Verstappen. So it's quite interesting, the fact that Max Verstappen has really taken his time to try and get past Alonso. Can't seem to really make that maneuver.
I think with these wet conditions and these aging tires, it definitely makes it quite difficult. They become like driving on ice here around this track, especially with all of these very tight corners. You do not want to make any mistakes here today.
No, not at all. And Alonso's on the radio. He's saying, is there any dry line? Because I cannot see any from the car. So he can't see.
Team telling him at the moment they are slowly appearing, but not very clear from our side either.
So Fernando Alonso clearly also would like to basically...
I'm sure he would love to move to slicks to get the Red Bull off of his tail.
Yeah,
but
basically
him
Alonso
and the
knows
team
he's
both
losing
say
time.
that it is not ready just yet for slick tires. As we see Mercedes starting to pull some tires, possibly for George Russell.
Yes, I'm hoping that Russell is used as the guinea pig here, basically to try and say to the rest of the field, right, this is how the slick is doing. Because as we called earlier, we said Russell will probably be used as the guinea pig for Hamilton, because they need to try and get some pace for Hamilton to move into the podium places and to get some big points for Merck. So,
yes, and it does not cost Mercedes anything at the moment to box Russell, even if he falls to the end of the grid, as he is currently not in a point scoring position.
and he doesn't look like he's going to be moving through the field at any great rapid pace, because he's still only in 16th after starting at the back of the grid. And whilst that sounds like he's made up 4 places, it's obviously Latifi and Zhou who crashed into each other, Magnussen who had issues, and Alexander Albon who also had an issue where he decided to spin in turn 4, I think it is. So Russell only really making up those places as a result of driver issues, and still can't get past Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo. So essentially it's looking like a very difficult race for Russell. So you may as well, as Merck, thinking that you've got Hamilton up in the big points, saying, well, let's use Russell. We'll be the first ones to put him into the pits. We'll say, right, here's a slick tire, go out into the track and let's see what does it look like. As Verstappen does take
Fernando Alonso as there is a yellow flag
Yellow
on track
flag,
at the moment
sector
in
2.
sector 2. Let's see if we can spot on our track map. Looks like Alonso has stopped. Yes, he has.
Alonso has stopped on track.
Quite a lot of smoke coming from his. Looks like Fernando Alonso has an engine issue. Very, very upsetting to see that, as he was having a brilliant race here today, fighting for 5th position with Max Verstappen.
And indeed, unfortunately, I think that the likelihood of that engine issue comes from his defense of Max Verstappen trying to just stay ahead. A virtual safety car has been deployed, which means that all of the people will keep their interval gaps basically
We
around
may
the
now
track.
see people trying to make some pit stops, as you do get a bit of a cheat or cheap pit stop under the virtual safety car, as everyone is now slowed down to a specific delta.
Yes, I think I would not be surprised to see if Mercedes try to take George Russell into the pits.
We now see a replay of Fernando Alonso's engine failure. We do not see any smoke coming out the rear of his car, but the car just seems to completely die.
Yes, I think he also got a message from the team at the same time, basically saying engine failure, stop car, stop. So I think unfortunately Fernando Alonso's race has come to an end. Very disappointing for his 350th. He did break records today, but couldn't finish the race, which is exceptionally upsetting, as Yuki Tsunoda very, very, very nearly runs himself into the wall and almost causing a collision with the cars behind him.
As he goes into anti-stall there. Very interesting from
Yes.
Yuki Tsunoda. As we see now, George Russell in the pits, hopefully for some slick tyres. Let's see what tyres Mercedes choose to put him on.
I do think that they took the mediums out for this track, so I think we'll see what Mercedes do. So now this is our guinea pig.
Yes, indeed, you were correct. There are some medium tyres that are being put onto his car.
And so now this is going to be very telling for the rest of the race, as we do now have a first set of slick tyres. The medium tyres have been brought out onto George Russell's car, which will be telling for the rest of the field as to what they do. This is the first time, and everybody will be monitoring George Russell and following George Russell around the track to see how he fares with the track, how his pace is. If it's increased and it's a better pace and the tyres are holding up, you'll see everybody jump into the pits as quickly as they possibly can.
Let's follow him now into these first few corners and see how these medium tyres, which are still very cold. Oh, as he has a massive drift into corner 3, just managing to hold onto it, not going into the wall there, but I think at the moment just showing that it is not ready as of yet. Verstappen on the radio right now, Mark trying to catch it for us.
Basically, the radio basically telling Verstappen that George Russell has come out onto the track on medium tyres, and that they're going to be monitoring him, and they'll let him know of a potential box as soon as possible. Yes, so virtual safety car right now. Alonso out of this race. He's had an engine failure as he was battling with Max Verstappen to stay ahead of him. Unfortunately, an engine failure has caused his race to come to a premature end.
Yes, his very unfortunate for Fernando Alonso today in his 350th race start, setting an all-time race start record. As we see a replay of George Russell just drifting through corner 3 there.
I think that may well have come from he drove through a wet patch.
As we have Russell on radio, I think just talking about that slide.
Yes, I think, as I say, what happened was you did see George Russell come out of the pits, and there was a small wet patch that came out of the pits onto that his car obviously went over. And I think that may well have caused just the small slide to occur. But now, I don't think that'll be very telling for what the tyre does on the track so far. What you will see now is still monitoring the pace of that car. If he starts to move quicker and he's found enough grip, you'll see most of these cars come into the pits because nobody wants to be left behind.
We have seen Kevin Magnussen overtaking Alex Albon now as the session goes green.
Yes, and Hamilton has gained some time somehow on Sainz. Definitely utilized that delta pace to his best ability, to the best way possible, and he is now closing in on Carlos Sainz. So we see a new fastest sector from Max Verstappen in the first sector.
Finally, with some fresh air, able to hopefully close down that gap to Lando Norris in 5th.
Okay. And we have just lost our feed right now, so we will get that back up for you right now. No fear at all. But Reese will continue to commentate and just explain exactly what's happening.
Yes, at the moment we have our
I found a picture
weather radar
we took
on
many years
screen,
ago.
just showing how there is no more
When
rain
I said to
being
you we
predicted
would
in the rest of
never
this race. We do not see
grow.
any clouds over the
Messages
track
I've
anymore, so hopefully
saved
the
that
track
I
should be able
never
to dry out
send,
completely.
'cause I don't know you, but I used to back
Changing
then.
our camera
I
batteries right
remember
now.
that I was drunk on my mind when we
Have
kissed for the
Sergio
first
Perez at the
time.
moment.
In the back of your car we passed out,
Gap of
counting
2.4
stars.
seconds. Charles Leclerc
Promised all
then
these
a
years
massive
we'd
gap
pack our
to Carlos
things and
Sainz.
disappear.
9 seconds
I never thought I
behind
would
Racing.
see you here.
Carlos
After all
closely by
this
Verstappen,
time.
27 seconds behind him. Our camera feed now back. Thank you, Mark, for changing those batteries.
Yes, and we see Max Verstappen really now making use of that clean air that he's got ahead of him, as he has now gone fastest lap, and he's now gaining time very quickly on Lando Norris. He was about 3 seconds behind whilst he was with Alonso's fight, and now is already only 1.4. So gaining time very quickly on the McLaren. But we'll have to go a lot quicker during the rest of the race as he goes on, as the gaps closing for the gaps being created rather from the top four is really starting to get quite big for Verstappen to
Lewis
catch.
Hamilton just ever so slightly closing that gap on Carlos Sainz. Now 0.9 seconds between the two of them, as we see Fernando Alonso looking very forlorn on the side of the track watching the race. Unfortunately not able to compete as he suffered an engine failure while fighting with Max Verstappen.
Yes. The interesting thing here is that Russell seems to be going, well, we don't know yet really, because essentially the medium tire has been brought out. Nobody's been talking about it on the radios to see whether or not it's been doing anything. So clearly everyone's thinking, well, there's no real indicator to come off the...
He is slowly closing that gap. I'm just watching that delta time between him and Alexander Albon, and within the last few seconds he has closed that gap by a few tenths, but then dropping again, obviously in that wetter section. So clearly not ready just yet for slick tires. He's dropping yet again by another 5-6 tenths. So,
yes, and Russell also being compared to Max Verstappen's times right now, showing that he is slower through each section as well. Of course, don't forget that the medium tires will need to just warm up a little bit, as well as he needs to get used to the grip of the medium tire on the track right now. But right now showing the medium tire not the right choice of tire to move on to quite just yet. But I think just before the 30th lap, you might as well see people start to make their changes.
Yes, definitely. We are starting to see a dry line being formed as we see some pictures of Max Verstappen slowly closing that gap to Lando Norris. Just 1.1 seconds now between the two of them. .8 seconds still covering, or now jumped up to 3.1 seconds between Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez having a great race here today. Ferrari really surprising me here today. I thought they would be in the fight for the race win today, but clearly not happy with these wet conditions. The Red Bull having superior race pace. Massive gap though from first to third, with 14.4 seconds splitting the difference between Perez and Carlos Sainz, possibly caused by Carlos Sainz fighting off or fending off Lewis Hamilton now with a 1.2 second gap. Max Verstappen now within a second to Lando Norris. We could see them scrapping it out now within the next few laps. Definitely been a lot of action here on track today. Been great to watch and have you all alongside here with us. Ocon now as well closing the gap on Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda having a bit of a moment earlier in the virtual safety car lap, as there's now a yellow flag out on track. Don't know who that is caused by as of yet. Alex Albon is in the wall. That is going to be a safety car out on track, as he is currently reversing but has lost his front wing. So there will have to be a safety car to remove that debris from the track. Alex Albon now limping back to the pits, completely without a front wing. We just see how that nose cone is slightly damaged, but that is going to be quite a lengthy pit stop now to replace that front wing, as we see the Williams mechanics preparing for his pit stop. Very disappointing from Alex Albon. Looks like he also has a front left puncture, which will make him limping back to the pit lane even more difficult. As we see, he just locks up into that corner and just plummets straight into the barriers. Very difficult race here for Alex Albon today, as he also ran off into the runoff section on the first lap. Yeah, just locking up, had absolutely no chance there.
It's unfortunate for Alex Albon. It's caused a virtual safety car yet again. So now we see Magnussen's come into the pits as well. So
looks like the Ferraris are getting ready for a pit stop there. Just hands on the tires, Red Bull, not at all. Everyone sitting tight in the pit lane or watching the screens.
I say very interesting right now is that we're starting to get towards almost the middle of the race right now, and no real change from the Red Bull pit wall, but everybody else seems to be looking to eventually will start moving off to slick tires. And I think one of the reasons why you might also be seeing Ferrari preparing earlier than Red Bull is that Ferrari do have more downforce than the Red Bull, which means that they could protect those tires and get around the track a little bit easier than the Red Bull might.
Now we have Alex Albon in the pits, stopping perfectly on his pit markers. That front wing now being changed. It is quite a lengthy pit stop, unfortunately, because of that change. Putting him on slick tires, though.
They're retiring the car. They are indeed retiring the car.
Yes, it does look like they will be retiring the car for
yes, the
today's race,
front right engineer called a no-go on the car, seeing some damage. Clearly, that's not going to be raceable. So that is our fourth driver out of the session.
We currently see the stewards trying to remove that wing. It is currently wedged underneath the concrete barrier. There we go. They have now been able to remove it.
I'm surprised that they've allowed race to continue, considering the fact that we still have stewards on track. We've got a green flag, but clearly they must have seen there was a big gap. I think there was a bit of an early call to have released on the green flag, whilst we still have stewards on track. But we'll hope that they're off the track by the time they get to that section.
Charles Leclerc now 4.2 seconds behind Sergio Perez. A dominating performance from Sergio Perez here today.
As we now see Verstappen, who's now right on Norris's tail in the battle for fifth. He looks to be gaining a lot of time very quickly on Norris, so you might well see an overtake within the next lap from Max Verstappen to push himself into fifth.
36 meters at the moment, splitting the two cars. Going into the heavy chicane section, Max Verstappen having a slight slide through there, but managing to keep the car on track.
Will have lost a little bit of time, of course, in his pursuit of Lando Norris as a result of that little slip.
Currently 1 second separating those two drivers. Now just fallen behind, well, fallen under 1 second, 0.989. As Hamilton is now on the radio, I'm just losing so much time behind this guy. He's really slow. Obviously behind Carlos Sainz at the moment. Carlos Sainz playing the team game, just holding Hamilton up from fighting with Leclerc,
yes,
who is 15 seconds up the road.
Not quite sure what Hamilton wants his team to do about that, is because it is currently his racing rival that he needs to get past. Basically, he needs to get past Sainz. So if he's slowing it down, Hamilton will need to move up and get quicker and pass him then. So of course this.
As we see another car in the wall, that is the Alpine of Esteban Ocon. Looks like he is not.
He is moving.
Out.
He's trying to reverse.
Possibly just waiting for a gap, but I don't see any other cars
there
around.
Is a gap.
Oh, no,
no, his car is smoking.
Like
This could potentially be a safety car, because this car is not moving happily, and it is quite close to the racing circuit. This will not be a virtual safety car. This is likely to be a safety car deployed, which means that we may see some big movement in the pits. Might see everybody
definitely
moving onto their medium
is still
tire.
Moving. There's quite a lot of smoke coming out of that car, either from the engine or from his rear brake ducts. We don't know as of yet. He is in neutral. Just trying to hear what he is saying at the moment on the radio.
Oh, and he is.
Yeah, there looks like there is oil being dropped by that car at the moment, so I would believe he will be out of the session.
Yes, definitely leaking oil there, so he's going to have to stop his car, and that's going to be a safety car, I imagine, to get rid of that car.
Double retirement from Alpine today. Very, very disappointing for them.
Yes, so double the retirement for Alpine, double retirement for the Williams, and Guanyu Zhou of the Alfa Romeo is also out, so losing lots of races.
Not of his own consequences, being taken out by Nicholas Latifi. Nicholas Latifi just not having a very good move on him and forcing him into the wall.
Yeah, it's quite interesting is Ocon didn't actually go into anything, so we see Ferrari are readying a pit.
As we have a virtual safety car deployed, this will likely be Carlos Sainz being put into the... As we see Ferrari changing the tyres that they had.
No, so Leclerc's, I think it was Leclerc who came into the pits. Perhaps, no?
No, he's still 5 seconds behind Perez, but it looks like the Ferrari mechanics are wanting to put...
I think it was the dummy call potentially, because none of the Ferraris have come into the pits. They've all gone past.
They also had a set of intermediates, which I would not think anyone would be putting on right now.
Yes, I think potential dummy call to try and convince other teams to go into the pits. They might well pit in the next pass around, but definitely
we will have to wait and see.
So already lost 5 drivers in this race so far. Russell is sitting in last place on her medium tyre. He has lost quite a bit of time to the races ahead of him, so obviously came out a bit early on those medium tyres, losing quite a bit of time. But you are still seeing a lot of movement to the pits that people might potentially be moving to the medium tyre soon, or to a slick tyre of some description at least.
As we see a replay of... Oh wow, yes, that is definitely an engine failure, as we see a massive plume of smoke coming out of the back of that Alpine of Esteban Ocon.
Yes, not quite sure how they thought that Picard may potentially get going again.
Definitely a bigger failure than what we saw happening for Fernando Alonso.
Interestingly enough, that Ocon was trying to get out of the car whilst the car is still in neutral and rolling back, so the moving car, and he was attempting to get out of the vehicle, so clearly he's told not to apply any form of electronics of some sort that would have enabled the clutch to, the handbrake to have been put in. Although I suppose,
these Formula 1 cars do not have handbrakes,
so his brakes would obviously not work in that regard. So he's waiting for the stewards to get there to go and stop the car. But
Perez at the moment 29 laps into this session. Perez still leading on Charles Leclerc, followed closely by Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen down in 6th, Pierre Gasly 7th, Sebastian Vettel in 8th, Lance Stroll in 9th, and then Daniel Ricciardo rounding out our top 10 for now.
Yeah, so just as a result of cars getting out of the session, Mick Schumacher is edging ever closer to the points, ahead of his teammate Magnussen, who obviously picked up some damage early on in the race. So Magnussen, unfortunately, his race pretty much ruined by that sort of damage. But simply by the cars just going out of this race, as we always see at Singapore, as it's been proven again, always got safety cars, always have crashes. Not all of the drivers make it to the end of the race. So currently under virtual safety car again for the 3rd time, I believe, and
yes,
that's excluding the safety car that we actually had. So lots of time being spent under conditions that are not racing.
As we see Lewis Hamilton right behind Carlos Sainz there, not necessarily holding on his gap that he would have to have. Possibly just moving off of the racing line to cool down his intermediate tyres, as they do overheat quite a lot under dry conditions. Just waiting at the moment for the perfect time to stop onto slick tyres, as Charles Leclerc is currently 9.2 seconds behind Sergio Perez. Jumping back up again now to 6.3 seconds, possibly just cooling down his engine a little bit under this virtual safety car. Do we see Lewis Hamilton overtake? No. If he did overtake Carlos Sainz under virtual safety car, he will have gotten a penalty.
The virtual safety car is ending now, so we are seeing Max Verstappen. Oh no! Max Verstappen tried to get going early on and has completely messed up his attempt and has to fall out of it. as he tried to gain an advantage. He saw that the safety car was ending early, and he tried to get the jump on Norris as it ended, but clearly mistiming it and jumped him too early, and has now lost quite a bit of valuable time that he had to
big
Norris.
lock up there, yes. As we see now, Lewis Hamilton closing in on Carlos Sainz. Max Verstappen, as a result of that big lockup, now 1.4 seconds behind Lando Norris. It does not look like Max Verstappen actually overtook him under virtual safety car, which would be yes, just staying slightly behind Lando Norris, luckily not overtaking him, as he will have gotten a penalty. McLaren mechanics not looking very impressed with Max Verstappen, as he is now right on the tail of Lando Norris, hopefully being able to take him down this main straight, coming into the penultimate corner.
And now entering the last corner. Will he be able to gain? I don't think he's going to make it in time. He's a bit too far away from the McLaren.
But he may be able to take him into this next DRS zone that is currently still disabled because of the wet weather. Max Verstappen trying to fight his way up the pack at the moment, having started in 8th because of Red Bull's qualifying blunder yesterday.
Indeed, and Max Verstappen really getting close to Norris now. He's really trying to make that move count. He's going to try and take him now as he gets through.
I think everyone at the moment is currently struggling on their tyres. Max Verstappen just taking a wider line through there, hopefully to cool his tyres down, as we see him go through a little puddle of water. 0.7 seconds currently between the two of them.
Yes, I'm surprised that we're not seeing much action in the pits, because it definitely looks like these intermediate tyres are not going to be holding up for much longer.
These intermediates now have run for about 31 laps of this Grand Prix. We see how the tread has been worn down. We should definitely see some pit stops happening soon, as we see Max Verstappen ever closing that gap on Lando Norris, but not able to make the move. We still see how the cars are flashing down all of the straights, just showing how they're constantly harvesting energy, not able to fully deploy their ERS at the moment with these wet-ish conditions right now.
Indeed. And you can just see that for all that this track that Max Verstappen and other drivers have managed to make a couple of overtakes, it is so difficult to overtake, because Max has really been held up by a lot of drivers, and the only way he could manage to get past Alonso was Alonso having to have an engine failure and still struggling to get past Norris, because I think half the issue is because you always want to try and get as close as you can just before hitting a main straight or that of alternative. Problem is there are enough corners before that happens that you lose time going through those corners. So by the time you get to the straight, you don't actually have a small enough gap to close in and take him without the
Sergio
DRS.
Perez is currently on the radio. Still not.
Yes, so the Red Bull engineers watching Russell very closely and letting Perez know that Russell is not improving times against the intermediates yet. He's still struggling a bit on the medium tire, so it doesn't look like Red Bull want to pit anytime soon.
Place, which is the last place at the moment on the grid. Max Verstappen still trying to make a move on Lando Norris right now.
Yeah, as I say, unfortunately, you can't ever make these moves stick, because it just runs out of road at the end of the day. So Max Verstappen really struggling to get past Norris, and Norris is just building an even bigger gap to the top 4, which is making it more difficult for Max Verstappen to try and get these places up. It's built up a gap of about 14.5 seconds from Norris to Hamilton. So Verstappen really being held up by Norris, but it's the same that we could say for Hamilton and Sainz.
But he is right on him now. Let's see if he's able to make a move here. No, just locks up a little bit there into that corner, just running a little bit wide as well. He will lose a bit more time as a consequence of that.
Yes, Max Verstappen having a very similar situation with Norris as Hamilton is having with Sainz. Hamilton being held up by Sainz permanently because Sainz has also built up a huge gap to Leclerc of 18.5 seconds, where you see Hamilton struggling to get past Sainz. Clearly, Sainz playing some defensive work there, and also playing the team game here in making sure that Leclerc's got a lot of track and a lot of concentration just on taking Perez or just on keeping with Perez. So Sainz dropped off really, really far, but Hamilton cannot seem to get past Carlos Sainz. So I think the only way you're going to see this sort of thing happen is when we should pit for a new set of tires, and if the DRS zone should be enabled, maybe you'll then start to see some more interesting racing happening. What I would not be surprised about at all is if we see another safety car come out.
Yes, we currently have another yellow flag on track as it goes green again. As we see Lewis Hamilton in the wall.
Hamilton is in the wall. Lewis Hamilton is in the wall. He is still moving. The car is still moving.
Does not look like he has damaged his front wing too much, but that is disastrous for Lewis Hamilton.
Not only that, that means that Norris and and
Max Verstappen is now on his tail.
And Hamilton joins the track as Norris and Hamilton are in there, and Hamilton has wedged himself in between Norris and Verstappen. So now we have Verstappen trying to get past Lewis Hamilton, who came out of nowhere.
It's disastrous at the moment for Lewis Hamilton. That is the last thing that he would have wanted right now at this phase in the Grand Prix.
One imagines Lewis Hamilton must have locked up
Yes, he has
seriously
some
badly.
end plate damage at the moment, so he may also, like Kevin Magnussen, get a black and orange flag.
Yeah.
We have a team radio at the moment from Charles Leclerc.
Yes, indeed. And we are having a pit from Ferrari. It looks like they are bringing out medium tyres for Charles Leclerc.
Yet again, doing a dummy pit stop.
Yes.
Taking those tyres back into the pit lane again. But Lewis Hamilton will have to box this lap or the next because that wing is dragging on the floor.
Indeed. The car looks intact, says Hamilton, but the engineer is going to have to tell him that indeed, no, his front wing is scraping on the bottom of the track at times. He's going to have to get that nose replaced. What they might well do is they may bring him in and try and put him on the medium tyre. I don't know, because they still don't reckon it's time for the medium tyre.
As he carries on, he does not come into the pits. Verstappen is now on the radio. He's gaining on Lewis Hamilton, but still not able to take him into that first corner.
Yes, Lewis Hamilton, I'm sure, will
As
get
we
a
have
black and
Pierre
orange
Gasly
flag.
in the pits right now.
Very, very interesting. And Stroll has now, as I say, Gasly got into the pits. So this is another driver now who's going to potentially change his tyres and put on a different compound, as now Max is no longer battling with Norris and in fact battling with Hamilton out of nowhere. So
Pierre Gasly now in the pits. As
Hamilton's
we see, Hamilton's wing has now failed and is dragging all along that pit straight, the main straight.
Will surely be a black and orange flag. Hamilton has to come into the pits to get that nose replaced. So he's going to lose a lot of time there. And you will see that Sebastian Vettel, Lance Stroll, Daniel Ricciardo, Mick Schumacher, and even potentially Gasly could all overtake Hamilton as he goes into the pits, because we know that replacing the nose cone takes so much time.
Here we are seeing a replay now of Lewis Hamilton's incident as he just locked up into turn 4 and just smashed into that Armco barrier there. Luckily, it is not the concrete barrier, otherwise that could have been race ending for Lewis Hamilton. I'm surprised he is able to carry on running on those intermediates after that massive lockup that he had there.
It sort of speaks to how good the
Leclerc is in the pits.
Leclerc is in the pits. Leclerc has decided it is time for mediums. Ferrari has decided it's time for mediums.
George Russell starts setting the fastest sectors, so definitely
indeed it is now time to start going into the pits. George Russell is now starting to put in quick laps on his medium tyre.
Yes, has set the fastest lap of the session so far, so we should see all of the teams starting to come in now.
Big problem for Perez is the fact that he really needs to get around this track as quickly as possible in terms of his intermediate tyre, because you can obviously see that the medium tyre is quicker. What is the only good thing is that it will take Leclerc a little bit of time to get these tyres warm.
As Lewis Hamilton now comes into the pits, Max Verstappen staying out on his intermediate tyres.
Perez surely coming in here as Russell is now putting these fast tyres on.
Lewis Hamilton now in his pit box getting those tyres replaced as well as his front wing. You can see just how damaged that front wing is, just bouncing around there as the mechanics pick it up.
And the medium tyre has been put onto Hamilton's car. So both of the Mercedes now on medium tyres. Tsunoda on medium tyres. Gasly on medium tyres. Magnussen on medium tyres.
As he has now been released and is going back
Vettel
out
has
of
just
the
put
track.
out on his medium tyres. It's unfortunate with Vettel coming into the pits there because he's going to come out just behind Hamilton, but he may well have obviously taken Hamilton.
He has taken him.
Yes, he has indeed. It was a brilliant pit stop from Aston Martin as they came in after Hamilton. Obviously, Hamilton having to replace the front wing, but Vettel has come out ahead of Hamilton as they've managed to put off a very good pit stop. That's why they're all high-fiving each other, I suppose.
Mick Schumacher as well in the pits right now, as we see a replay of Charles Leclerc just locking up during his pit stops, just missing his mark and pushing his front jackman just a bit out the way.
And the good news for Red Bull is that it was about a 5.3 second pit stop. So as Perez comes into the box, let's see if Red Bull can put off a better pit stop, because then they can gain time on Leclerc, as Leclerc is now starting to gain.
But 25 seconds currently split between Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz. We should see Carlos Sainz coming in this lap.
A good pit stop from Red Bull, so they have definitely gained time.
2.8 seconds from the Red Bull team.
Now, Perez has gained a significant amount of time over Leclerc as a result of that pit. In fact, that has worked out brilliantly for Red Bull, as we see Red Bull staying out there, obviously, for Max Verstappen, who's
and
next.
Now, not Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz in the pits for his first pit stop of the day. We should see Max Verstappen being brought in soon, yes, as he is currently being talked to on the team radio. Max Verstappen in the pits for his first set of slicks today. 3.5 second pit stop from the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. Yellow flag in sector 2. This could work out very well for Max Verstappen if there's another safety car.
It is a stopped car. It is a safe. It might likely be.
Yes, it is Yuki Tsunoda in the wall.
Yuki Tsunoda on his brand new medium tires into the wall. Yeah, that will have to be a safety car. They have to remove that car from the track. That's not going to be easy. That will be a safety car, surely.
Yes, as Yuki Tsunoda is being told to switch his car off. That is session ending for him today. As you can see, the frustration as he hits his steering wheel there and gets out of the car. Very interesting here is that now Lance Stroll and Sebastian Vettel have been promoted up into 7th and 8th place.
So now, as a result of this, safety car has indeed been brought out, which is going to benefit Max Verstappen brilliantly, as well as the Ferraris, who are now going to catch that time that they actually lost by mistake. And Norris sitting in 3rd should favour him as well, as he needs to come into the pits. But they do need to double stack, because both Ricciardo and Norris are still on intermediate tyres. But Daniel Ricciardo, just by the way, also up into 6th.
We currently see a replay of Yuki Tsunoda. Just loses it on his fresh medium tyres. Just goes straight into the barrier there at quite a pace. That front end of the AlphaTauri will be completely destroyed. That is going to be quite a bit of a rebuild for the AlphaTauri mechanics before the next race. As we see George Russell coming in for another set of mediums. That's quite interesting, obviously having burnt through his first set.
And also just trying to get as good a medium tyre for the rest of the race. Of course, he can now catch Magnussen, Bottas, and potentially get into points because of the safety car. He can they can bunch up the field and get nice and close to everybody and try and actually get some points, perhaps.
Currently, Sergio Perez is still leading with a 6.97 second now lead on Charles Leclerc. Obviously, that will all become nullified with the safety car. They will all pack up behind that.
The safety car is out, and Perez is already behind it. And here comes Charles Leclerc. Norris is in the pits right now. Will Norris get out of the pits before Sainz gets round? That is the big question. Will he maintain his 3rd position? Is Carlos Sainz is going down the main straight. Norris is not going to be able to get ahead of Sainz, but he will come out in 4th, which is still quite a good result for him. Ricciardo will surely be coming to the pits as well, who is going to be overtaken by Max Verstappen. So Max Verstappen will gain a position as a result of the pit entry from Ricciardo. So Max Verstappen moves into 5th position, just behind now Norris, and then he can start looking at the podium positions.
Obviously, one of the biggest shockers at the moment is Lewis Hamilton's big mistake. As we see Ricciardo out on, are those soft?
Those are soft tyres for Ricciardo. Daniel Ricciardo has put on soft tyres, so This is a very, very interesting tactic.
As well as we
from-
have Valtteri Bottas down in 12th on softs. Currently, we have lost 6 drivers from this session. Those of Yuki Tsunoda, Esteban Ocon with an engine failure, Alex Albon with a crash, Fernando Alonso as well with an engine failure, Latifi and Guan Yu Zhou crashing into each other, ending both of their sessions.
Here's Hamilton here, who's had a very disappointing middle part of this race, who managed to lock his tyres up, go into the wall, and had to come in to get his nose replaced. So he was doing very well on the back of Carlos Sainz. Now apologizing to his team profusely for his error as he realizes what's happened to him. And now they're sitting in 9th behind 2 Aston Martins. And Max Verstappen has clearly easily overtaken him as a result of his error.
We see another replay again of Lewis Hamilton's error, just completely locking up and hitting that Armco barrier there.
I mean, it just sort of still speaks to the strength of these new cars, because he really hits that barrier. It's still quite a pace, and
Very
little damage
his
happened
front
to the car.
wheels.
There's only the front wing that just took a little bit damage, and it was only on the left, just hanging a little bit lower than it should have, and obviously had to get that replaced. It will be very interesting to watch how Daniel Ricciardo gets going off of this this restart, because he is currently sitting in 4th position, in 6th position, I apologize, so on a soft tyre, and Max Verstappen is obviously only on a medium tyre. So we'll be very interested to see how Ricciardo manages to get past, if he manages to get a quicker restart under the safety car, and which could sort of really impact Verstappen's race, because they may well send Ricciardo out on the soft tyre to try and get ahead of Verstappen quite as quickly as they can, and basically just hold him up, so they can allow Norris to build up a big gap, which could potentially ruin Verstappen's race.
We now see Sergio Perez behind the safety car, obviously having released Hamilton, who first picked up the safety car. But Mylander, our safety car driver, just leading the track, or leading the pack at the moment. The humidity here in Singapore obviously making it very hard for the track to have dried, which is why it has taken 38 laps for us to get some slick tyre running from the rest of the pack. Obviously, George Russell going on early to test them out, but not having any gains from it until about 2 laps ago, when we had the crash of Yuki Tsunoda.
Yes, indeed. So now we see 6 cars out, both Williams, both I've gone blank on their
As we
names.
see a replay of Lando Norris locking up, hopefully not causing too much of a flat spot on those brand new medium tyres.
Indeed, and we are also watching Sergio Perez here with the safety car. Why is the safety car going so slowly? You have to wonder.
That is going very slowly down that main straight. Sergio Perez down
very
in
upset
3rd
with
gear.
it.
Very, very upset.
Yes, I think sometimes the safety cars do that to try and box
Or just to
the
back the
drivers
pack up
more.
a bit.
So Sergio Perez, of course, not wanting that to happen, as he wants to try and wants the rest of the grid to be a bit more spread out, as a more boxed up grid could potentially cause another safety car. So
We still have the marshals at the moment trying to repair those barriers. As we see the helmet cam of, I think that is Charles Leclerc, just opening his visor a little bit, possibly to cool himself down, as it is just so humid here today. If we just transition over to our weather graphic, you can see that it is currently 26 to
I found a
27
picture
degrees
we
out
took
on
many
track
years
at the moment. Still very warm, even though we
when
have
I
had
said
some
to
rain.
you we would never grow.
You can see now with our track, our tracker, yes, that the pack has been backed up quite a lot now. Everyone catching the safety car. Russell still all the way at the back of the grid right now.
yes, Russell now on a brand new set of medium tyres again. So he was the first driver out on mediums. Didn't really work for about a good 8-9 laps before it actually started to put in the quicker times, and then Yuki Tsunoda went and had a crash, which has caused all of the cars to come in and do a pit stop and get onto the medium, and some of the drivers, being Bottas and Ricciardo, onto the soft tyres. So I'm very intrigued to see how they get restarted under the safety car. As the safety car going around again, so obviously all these drivers will be very much boxed up and we will have a very interesting restart. I'm sure that Verstappen is going to try to look to take Norris as quickly as possible because otherwise Ricciardo is going to be on him with softs.
Here we have another replay of Yuki Tsunoda's crash, just going, I think, a bit too deep on his brakes there and just completely destroying both front tyres, completely destroying that suspension, the front wing, everything. You can see how disappointed he is in himself as he is sitting on the side of the track, completely drenched in sweat at the moment, just showing how much of a physical race this is here in Singapore, as we have a safety car ending this lap.
Indeed, and the car is currently only about halfway around the track, so now we know safety car is ending. I'm
Top
very
five
intrigued.
are quite close together, at least right now. This should completely nullify everything else that has happened in the race, and we should see some very close running.
Indeed, and Hamilton will be very disappointed about his mistake because as a result of Tsunoda's crash, Hamilton may well have been currently where Norris is in fourth on a new set of mediums and ready to try and take Sainz because given those sort of conditions now, it would suit the Merc more a bit of Hamilton to try and see if he could take Sainz because it makes it a little bit easier to overtake on a slicker tyre. So Hamilton will be desperately disappointed.
Perez is currently on the radio.
Yeah. So
Sergio Perez now just backing up the pack quite a bit.
yes, now we have mind games as well from Sergio Perez to try and make sure that he gets away from Leclerc because now it's the first time Leclerc is going to be right on Perez with a set of slick tyres, and Perez of course doing very well to get away from the Ferraris earlier on in this race, but now heading into the second half of this race he's now on slicks. They've been bunched up again, so all of his work for nothing yet again. And
we have seen though through the weekend how strong this Ferrari is on a set of slick tyres. So let us see if Verstappen is currently on radio.
Verstappen is worried about the temperature of his right rear brake. He sees something on his dash saying that it's overheating a little bit, or something is clearly becoming an issue there.
Possibly
so
with debris,
we
but
have
we are
green
green
flags.
now.
We have green flags. We are racing, and Leclerc has got a very good start to try and catch
as well as Max
Perez.
Verstappen has got a good start on Lando Norris. We see Sergio Perez weaving down that main straight just to generate some more heat into his tyres.
Yes, the same as Max Verstappen, and I'm very intrigued to follow Ricciardo here, if Ricciardo can go quicker, because I think the idea of McLaren is they're going to try and hope that Ricciardo is going to get as close to Max Verstappen as quickly as possible to try and cause an issue basically with Verstappen trying to decide if he tries to overtake Norris or
Let's
if he...
see if he can get round Norris now into this first. Yes, he is making a move and locks up hugely into that corner.
Max Verstappen, huge lock up
into
the turn-off area. All of his work has been for nothing. He goes in late and now loses lots of positions.
One position, two positions, three positions, now down back
and
into
Max
eighth.
Verstappen is now fighting again with Hamilton.
Looks like that may have been from his radio message that he did have with his brake temperatures. Clearly not happy with the brakes. Hopefully not flat spotting those
Hamilton
tyres
very
too
close
much.
to Max Verstappen. Hamilton's making a move, or is trying to have a look at least.
And Max just closes that door once again on Lewis Hamilton. Bit of a repeat from last year now, with these two fighting for 8th place. Sergio Perez now 8/10ths ahead of Charles Leclerc, just ever so slightly. Sorry, Verstappen on radio right now.
Verstappen saying, I couldn't really make it out, but it almost sounded like he said, I need to pit. But
now we watch the replay of him. Just possibly choosing his braking point just slightly too late and locking up. Obviously the first race running laps on these new medium tyres that he has had.
You see, I think Max Verstappen was trying to get ahead of Norris as quickly as possible before Norris's tyres warmed up.
As he is now coming into the pits. Hopefully not a race-ending incident for him.
And Perez is currently Perez's infringement has been noted with the safety car. in terms of going alongside
Max
the safety
Verstappen
car.
now pitting for some soft tyres. Let's see if that fixes his brake issue, possibly having some debris in his brake ducts with a 3-second stop from Red Bull. Let's see if this brings him back up with George Russell with a right rear puncture.
Yes, this will be a yellow flag wherever he goes.
Looks like he may have rubbed tyres with someone else, as his right rear has lost all of the paint from the yellow wall tyres. It looks more grey right now than yellow. Let's
So
wait
this
and
race
see for
proving a very,
replay.
very difficult one, as per usual, with lots of drivers crashing out, lots of safety cars, lots of incidents, and yet again, after we've just finished a safety car, we have Verstappen going off into the runoff areas, come back into the pits again, and we now have Russell, who is also going very slowly, very gingerly, as he's taken by Verstappen after he's just had his pit with a right rear puncture.
So
As
we
we now
see a
see a
replay of what happened. It was between him and Mick Schumacher. George Russell just banging into Mick Schumacher through turn 1. Mick Schumacher racing very cleanly there, and Russell just giving him no room.
Yeah, so Russell tried to say something, and his engineer said back very quickly, "You went into him, but," and then sort of stopped. So more or less saying, "You caused the collision, you idiot." So Russell is losing out a lot of time. He's going to try and limp his way back to the pits, as we see a fastest lap from Charles Leclerc,
who is slowly closing that gap now to Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez now needing to put in his best laps of the race in order to hold on to that P1.
Indeed, as it stands, Verstappen's not getting any points from this race,
but still stays our current championship leader with 335 points, from Leclerc with 237 points.
Leclerc is really closing on Perez. It is amazing how quickly these Ferraris get around this track when they're on a slick tyre, really putting in some quick laps now.
Still no DRS enabled, possibly in the next lap or the lap after that.
It's the one thing that I think perhaps Red Bull might try and think about is, we want to see the DRS enabled, because the moment the DRS is enabled,
as Mick Schumacher is going very slowly out on track, possibly from damage caused by George Russell. Very gingerly making his way through.
No, not happy at all. There's going to be another slow running. Is he going to try and limp his way back to the pits? Does he have a puncture, or is it an engine problem?
As Charles Leclerc just goes a bit deep into the hairpin, just locking up a little bit, trying to avoid hitting into the back of Sergio Perez, as now Mick Schumacher is in the pits.
Yes, and he's going very slowly around into the pits as well. He's clearly got quite a bit of damage from George Russell's collision.
We are now running via time, not on lap distance anymore to the end of the session, as we have a specific time period that you can only race here in Singapore. So we now have 29 minutes left of this race,
which means that we will finish just under 10 past the next hour, wherever you are. So 29 minutes left of this race, as we see Mick Schumacher and Russell now in the pits as a result of their collision. Russell with only a 5.4 pit stop, Schumacher with a 5.8. Fastest lap again from Charles Leclerc. He is really gaining on Sergio Perez now, as we now have
Mick Schumacher leaving the pits. Mick Schumacher on a set of softs at the moment.
Yes, everyone else who's gone back into the pits since the medium seems to be opting for the soft option.
Perez is currently on the radio, having issues with the drivability of the engine. That is not what we want to hear right now.
Yes, unfortunately, it is also a usual thing that as soon as they are under pressure, drivers do tend to go and seem to have issues with their cars, and after they've been passed, no longer those issues exist. However, we're looking now, Perez is losing time to Leclerc, so Red Bull, we need to start thinking about what they want to do here.
Sergio Perez, though, opening that gap now to Charles Leclerc. 0.8 seconds difference between the two of them. But a massive gap all the way down to Carlos Sainz. 6 seconds from Sergio Perez down to Carlos Sainz. Sergio Perez on the radio yet again. Under braking or on traction, he is being asked by the team. Saying both. Clearly quite under pressure here, as we see the DRS has now been enabled.
This is going to cause big problems for Sergio Perez, as with DRS, Charles Leclerc will gain big time on the start-finish straight, which they are approaching now. And Charles Leclerc really gaining time and putting in fastest laps as he keeps racing around. Sergio Perez may well go into the pits, perhaps. Oh, as he sees a little bit of a spin as he goes on there, a little bit of drifting, and Charles Leclerc really is on his tail. It is more or less surely going to happen, unfortunately, for Sergio Perez. Charles Leclerc will take him. Sergio Perez really struggling here as it goes to the start-finish straight, and there is now DRS for Charles Leclerc as he gets it and he gains that extra speed, really moving in.
Will he be able to overtake?
He's
No,
not going
just
to get there.
Sergio Perez just holds on to first position for now. Still half a second between Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc, as Charles Leclerc has a massive slide through that section. 0.7 seconds, 0.8 now, splitting the two of them, but he will get yet again DRS down this main straight.
Yes, and now with the DRS enabled, we're going to see Hamilton fighting with Vettel as well, as he was within a second of the Aston Martin. And will Hamilton try and fight his place back?
Sergio Perez still holding on to that first position after that DRS straight. 0.7 seconds splitting the two of them, as Sergio Perez, with no DRS, sets the first fastest sector.
So Sergio Perez, under lots of pressure, is now putting in some good times, as his teammate Max Verstappen down in 12th puts in the fastest lap of 151.3. So really is motoring that soft tyre, clearly working for him as well. So let us see how they can all fare. The interesting thing now is, are all of these racers going to try and finish this track on the same set of tyres they've currently got? We've seen George Russell come into the pits already to change onto what was a set of mediums and then back onto this another time on
as
a set
we
of
see
softs.
currently an onboard of Lando Norris catching Carlos Sainz by the looks of it. Yes, 0.7 seconds between Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz. Not drivers who we thought would be battling it out today.
Not at all. And if you actually look at the grid right now, no ways as we thought. Well, to be fair, we did say that it could make for a very interesting race in terms of different types of drivers being up on the grid. And those different types of drivers really for right now is the McLaren and the Aston Martin, who are currently sitting from 4th to 7th. So Norris is almost challenging for a podium position here with Sainz, as he is within a second. So for this DRS zone, as he approaches the start-finish set, could be a very, very interesting race now for the McLaren of Lando Norris and
Leclerc
Sainz.
still not able to close that gap to Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez clearly getting to grips with whatever issues he was having.
I think the issue that Perez has had seems to have subsided, as he's now pushing the fastest lap as well. He is gaining time away from Charles Leclerc, as we now see Lando Norris.
Charles Leclerc yet again with his DRS wide open, making gains on Sergio Perez right behind him at that braking point, but not able to make a move. 0.6 seconds currently between the two of them.
Indeed, and Norris's time gap to Sainz is increasing ever so slightly, as currently out of the DRS zone. So clearly he might have got orders from the team, old Sainz, to put foot a little bit, because he was really going to start coming under pressure. As you see, Max Verstappen now taking fastest lap away from Sergio Perez. These fastest laps are increasing at a dramatic rate of speed, by the way, because we've just had from 153 to 152, 151. We've really starting to speed these lap times up.
Leclerc is now right on the tail of Sergio Perez. 0.6 between the two of them, with Leclerc's wing wide open. Let's see if he can make a move down into this corner. No, he can't. He has a small lockup on his front right and a bit of a twitch getting close to that wall there.
As we see also that Hamilton has currently found the train of the two Aston Martins
and the one McLaren of Daniel Ricciardo, who on soft is not able to challenge his teammate.
No, so clearly the soft tyre is not actually doing as well as we'd hoped it would do.
As we have Charles Leclerc much closer this lap now on Sergio Perez down into the penultimate corner. Will he take him down this main straight? 0.3 seconds now between the two of them, as his DRS is now wide open.
Sergio Perez utilizing his ERS as much as possible to keep staying ahead of Charles Leclerc. The issue is the more he uses it on these start-finish straights, you're going to see him, unfortunately, lose that power.
As Leclerc has a bit of a slide through that corner, losing a bit of time. Now 0.6 between the two of them. Still, he will have DRS into this next sector.
And just a reminder to all of those watching, if you are desperate to watch this alongside with us, do go into the link of the description, the link in the description rather, to go and see a video on how you can watch live with us, and it will explain everything in the video. But right now we are still watching Perez and Leclerc battle it out for first, as well as Hamilton is catching the Aston Martins in his 8th and 7th place, as Max Verstappen puts another fastest lap in 12th. Yes, we can explain just Max Verstappen's race. Essentially, has been exceptionally frustrating. He started
Charles
the race
Leclerc
off.
very twitchy in that corner still. 0.5 seconds between Sergio Perez.
Indeed, and if you just talk about Max Verstappen's race so far, basically starting the race with a shifting into anti-stall as he started, losing 5 places at the beginning, making those up, and then a safety car comes out and he manages
Big
to
lockup from
overtake.
Sergio Perez. Still holding on to first position right now, but that will let Charles Leclerc close that gap a little bit more.
Yes, unfortunately, Charles Leclerc still not close enough to actually take Perez, I think, on the start-finish straight. I think you'll see this for a while now, where these two are going to be staying there and thereabouts. But you've seen with the track today, it's quite difficult to overtake. And then Max Verstappen also went a bit too late when he changed onto his medium tyres and then lost all the positions he'd made up. He was almost heading towards 4th position, locked up, and then lost all of his places again and had to come back into the pits as a result of that huge lockup that he had.
Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez now on the start-finish straight yet again. Charles Leclerc's rear wing wide open, but still not able to make gains on Sergio Perez.
As I
0.7 seconds splitting the two.
Right now, you're seeing the good thing about the Red Bull car being so fast in a straight is that even with the Ferrari's DRS open, you're still seeing the Red Bull manage to stay far enough ahead to stop that from happening. Of course, if they were longer start-finish straights or just straights in general, the DRS zone was longer, you'd see Charles Leclerc perhaps making moves, but they're just not long enough for the Ferrari to make an effect. But
As we see Max Verstappen now having caught Kevin Magnussen into the penultimate corner, he should be able to take him hopefully in this next corner, but Magnussen just edging out ahead of him. Max Verstappen desperately trying to get up into the points here today. He definitely needs to score as many points as possible, having had a shocker of a race here today. He is now in the DRS zone, DRS wide open, right behind Kevin Magnussen, gaining, and he's right alongside him and has overtaken him, now getting into the braking point. That just looked a bit too easy for Max Verstappen on Kevin Magnussen.
Indeed, as Perez puts in the fastest second sector whilst he's battling with Leclerc.
Big lockup from him there, just losing a little bit of time to Charles Leclerc. 0.4 seconds now between the two of them.
And Norris still staying within distance of Sainz, just 1.1 behind him, but not managing to get within the DRS zone to start challenging for that position. But as we've seen so far, really difficult to overtake near the top. The top position is top 6, really struggling to overtake from each other. The only way that the positions have changed, the top there, are from pit decisions and from safety car, well, basically from people messing up. But further down the field, we have seen some overtakes as Russell just takes Mick Schumacher now on the soft tyre in 13th.
The stewards decided that there would be no penalties given from George Russell crashing into the side of Mick Schumacher.
Which you do have to question, considering the damage that was caused to both cars.
Sergio Perez still leading the race at the moment, 0.59 seconds splitting there, well, Perez and Charles Leclerc. Quite an interesting end of session at the moment. 0.7 seconds now between the two of them as we have 18 minutes left of the session due to us running close to the Singapore curfew.
Indeed. So, still looking at the track right now, only 14 drivers left. Both Williams out, both Alpines out, Tsunoda out, and Zhou out.
Quite a lot of retirements here today, which is quite common in Singapore. Leclerc after that DRS zone into turn 15, still not able to make any gains on Sergio Perez, going a little bit deep into that corner. I think Leclerc may have just cooked his tyres a little bit too early in this last stint. Mattia Binotto looking on the team wall. I really do wonder, will we see him as Ferrari team boss next year after the way that he has performed this year?
No, I don't think there's a chance. I don't think there's a chance you see Binotto in the following season. There's just been too many wrong decisions, and quite apart from anything else, just a real sense of, or lack of professionalism, really,
Yes,
in terms of the handling
Ferrari
of the pit crew. Some really basic errors. Children errors essentially in terms of not having tires out for pits,
Well,
stuffing
as-
up the pits, the pit stops, and making poor decisions tactically
Well,
whilst
as we
on
heard
track.
from Nico Rosberg saying that they're making very stupid decisions, making Formula 2, if not Formula 3 errors here in Formula 1, what you cannot be doing if you want to fight for a championship. Charles Leclerc now 1.6 seconds behind Sergio Perez. I think now that his fight on Sergio Perez is now over.
Yes, Perez seems to be well in control for the rest of the race, and these medium tyres should last him to the end. So, provided nothing happens on track, which is not a given at all, considering today we've basically only had about 7 laps of racing in between incidents.
Well, you never know. We may even get another incident before the end of this race.
That's what I say. So, for another 6 or 7 laps, we've only had 6 or 7 laps of clean racing before an incident has happened, so it's likely that we'll have another incident before the end of this race. But depending on the type of incident, I think Sergio Perez should be fine for the rest of this race and should finish this race as in first position for Red Bull.
Max Verstappen closing on Valtteri Bottas at the moment for the first points position in 10th place. Hamilton complaining that he is battling to get temperature in his tyres. Are they the wrong tyres? He is asking the team.
Well, actually, rather telling the team these are the wrong tyres. So Hamilton clearly wanting softs, but no chance that he's going to go into the pits right now with only 15 minutes left of this race.
As we see another replay of George Russell overtaking a Haas. I think that is Mick Schumacher once again. Just saying how hard Mick Schumacher is currently defending for himself. Mick trying to race as hard as possible to prove that he does deserve a seat. As we see now Russell getting around.
Yeah,
Mick
this was,
Schumacher.
as I say, these are replays from earlier when Russell did take Mick Schumacher. But Russell basically complaining about the fact that it was taking forever to get past Mick Schumacher. Schumacher, well, not running last, but of the running cars, unfortunately, last in this race right now, and his teammate Magnussen just ahead of Russell as well. Currently have a battle for 9th with Gasly, Bottas, and Verstappen. Yes, I'm not sure you would have heard me correctly if I was saying towards the end of the race that Verstappen was battling for 9th. But yes, that is indeed the case. Not been a good day for Max Verstappen at all.
Unfortunately caused by a team error at Red Bull during qualifying. He was easily up on the pace of the pole sitter, but Red Bull choosing to pull him into the pits at the last second because they were not going to have enough fuel left in the car for a scrutineering. Verstappen now 0.7 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas. This could certainly turn out to be an exciting end phase of this Grand Prix.
As we see a faster sector from Perez, it does look like Perez and Leclerc's battle seems to have come to an end. Leclerc has put in the fastest lap, but I don't think it's going to be enough to get ahead of Perez in this race right now.
Unfortunately, he is out of the DRS zone, which will make things very difficult. But Max is right on the tail of Valtteri Bottas at the moment and is looking to overtake him. And does he? Yes, he does, into that corner.
Yes, Max Verstappen moves up into 11th place.
10th position.
10th position, I apologize. Sorry, 10th position. And will now be looking at Gasly. He's now moved into the points, Verstappen, of course, which is obviously very good for him, but definitely not where he wants to be.
In a race weekend where he could have taken the championship, this has been a very disappointing show for Red Bull and Max Verstappen. Obviously, Sergio Perez having a brilliant day out today, having taken the lead early on in the race on the first lap, just getting a brilliant start and edging over Charles Leclerc, who is now 1.8 seconds behind and slowly falling back 1.9 seconds now between the two of them.
And I think the one driver we have to look at in terms of, yes, of course, everything has sort of favoured him, but in terms of probably looking at driver of the day, has to be Daniel Ricciardo, who started way down in the grid and has managed to put himself up into 5th. Currently running behind his teammate Norris in 4th. So, of course, a brilliant day out for the McLarens. So, if they can sort of hold on to these positions, they're going to be very happy about life.
As we now see Max going for an overtake. Yes, he does. He makes it on Pierre Gasly up into 9th position now. Next driver up the road for him is Lewis Hamilton, but it is quite a bit of a gap. 5.2 seconds that Max will need to make up to Lewis Hamilton.
There's a big gap that Max needs to make up, but the thing is, Max is on softs and Hamilton on mediums, and Hamilton was complaining about the medium tyre. So Max Verstappen, with 12.5 minutes-ish to go, will still look at this and think, perhaps we can get ahead of Hamilton. I think that is his sights set before the end of the race. That'll be the driver he will want to try and overtake. Of course, his big rival Hamilton. If he can try and get there before the end of the race, will be quite an impressive feat, but certainly not impossible on a different compound tyre.
Yes, as we see now, Lewis Hamilton, 1.4 seconds off of Sebastian Vettel, not making any gains on him at the moment. With Max Verstappen behind Hamilton catching now, having caught half a second in that lap alone. Christian Horner currently on the pit wall chatting to Sky Sports. Definitely will be a big debrief from Red Bull at the end of this race. .3 seconds now splitting the top two in this race. Sergio Perez having a brilliant race here today. Max Verstappen chasing Lewis Hamilton, striking distance within 2 laps predicted by AWS here. Lewis Hamilton not seeming as happy on those medium tyres as Max Verstappen is on his softs.
I was about to say, clearly, I was a bit I was underestimating how much quicker Verstappen would be on the soft tyre. He's already only 33 seconds behind in 2 minutes. So in 2 minutes, he's already gained 2 seconds on Hamilton, which means in about 3 minutes' time, we should, not even less perhaps, see Verstappen take Hamilton. And Hamilton is very close to Vettel, so you may well see Verstappen finish in 7th place.
Sergio Perez is being told on the radio about a safety car infringement. We do not know what the penalty is.
Well, they said that they're going to be investigating after the race about his potential infringement with the safety car when he almost overtook it on the main start-finish straight. He got very frustrated with the pace of the safety car, and I think may well have potentially angered the FIA officials by going alongside the safety car temporarily before dropping back. So that
we
may
have
be
seen
investigated.
that a lot in the past with no action given. So hopefully they will not penalise him for that, as I feel that would be quite
It would be very harsh considering the fact that he did not actually overtake the safety car, but he did go alongside a little bit.
Just getting a bit squirrely there, going on a bit of the wet part of the track. Just dropping further back from Sergio Perez now. Sergio Perez, I feel, needs to create a bit of a buffer. It looks like Mercedes are getting ready possibly to retire a car here.
Yes, it looks like they're going to be retiring Russell. As they can see, Russell's not going to make up enough time. He is 1.4 minutes. 1 minute and 46 seconds behind Magnussen. Russell has indeed gone into the pits. They are retiring Russell from this race. They're going to let him finish in the pits alongside his teammates.
As Max Verstappen is now 1.2 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. They are not retiring George Russell. They're putting him on to a set of softs.
I suppose this is just to see how much quicker the softs are, but it's pointless to box Hamilton because there's only 9 minutes left of this race, and they're not going to box Verstappen or Gasly before the end of the race, so Hamilton would only lose positions if he should go into the box. So a seemingly weird decision from Mercedes because they're not gaining anything from this other than stats that will be null and void, I suppose. So a bit of a weird one to bring them into the pits, I suppose.
And if they do get the fastest lap, it will not count for points because they are out of the top 10. Only people within the top 10 can score that bonus point for fastest lap.
Exactly. So it is a very weird decision for Mercedes to have brought him in on softs, unless Russell was really struggling on his mediums and just needed to get something else. But for 8 minutes...
Max Verstappen is now within touching distance of Lewis Hamilton, half a second splitting the two of them.
Yes, so Max Verstappen on the softs much quicker than the medium tyre of the Hamilton's
Max
Mercedes.
Verstappen could make up quite a few positions here, as we can see the Aston Martins of Sebastian Vettel and Lance Stroll shortly
and in fact,
ahead.
What is interesting is Max Verstappen is managing to get right up to Hamilton's tail without any use of DRS. He's already there, so it means that when the DRS hits on the main straight, he should very easily take him as they hit into it now.
0.4 seconds splitting the two of them.
And his DRS will hit now.
Let's see if he can overtake Hamilton now on this main straight. No, he will not, but in the next one, he should be able to easily get past Lewis Hamilton.
Yes, as they turn into the straight now, as the DRS should hopefully kick in after this next turn.
Max Verstappen much more comfortable in this phase of the race on his soft tyres as opposed to Lewis Hamilton on a set of mediums.
The DRS is open for Max Verstappen. He is getting very close to Hamilton, but not actually close enough to make the overtake maneuver. But funny enough, Max Verstappen on the soft seems to be finding much quicker times through the corners than Lewis Hamilton, because he really gets close to him when he goes through these corners. Obviously managed to get a lot more grip with these soft tyres. So I think Max Verstappen might well try and make a maneuver somewhere in a weird location on the track.
Possibly in the hairpin in this next sector that they are going through right now. Unfortunately, I think he is slightly too far behind, 0.6 seconds, but Lewis Hamilton is being held up a little bit by Sebastian Vettel.
And Sergio Perez, meanwhile, pushing in the fastest lap. So Red Bull really are currently trying to take all the points in terms of Perez's race, but Verstappen has managed to put himself back into the points at least, and we'll see if he can take Hamilton and then followed by Vettel.
I think Sergio Perez also needs to try and get himself a bit of a buffer, possibly at least 5 seconds in case he does get given a penalty for a safety car infringement, but we shall see. 0.3 seconds now splitting Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton.
It is very interesting when Max Verstappen and Hamilton enter sector 3. Max Verstappen managed to get really close to Lewis Hamilton before it goes on starts the start-finish race.
It's very difficult for Max Verstappen to be able to overtake Lewis Hamilton at the moment, because Hamilton also has DRS on Sebastian Vettel.
And the problem is Hamilton may well not try and get past Vettel as a result, because, well, I suppose you would want to obviously get past Vettel, but he's trying to think about defending from Max Verstappen more than trying to overtake.
We currently have 5.5 minutes left of this race here in Singapore, getting to the end of the Singapore time curfew at the moment.
And Hamilton not getting close enough at all to Vettel to overtake, but Verstappen getting very frustrated by the fact that Hamilton does have DRS, because if Hamilton did not have it, you would have probably seen Verstappen take Hamilton already and probably move on to Vettel in due course.
Hamilton looks now like he is getting backed up quite a bit by Sebastian Vettel, just moving over to the side there in that straight just to get some fresh air into his engine to cool it down. But Max is now 0.5 seconds, 0.6 seconds behind Hamilton. He should be able to get quite close now into turn 15 for this next DRS straight, as he's very close, 0.4 seconds now between the two of them.
Yes, Verstappen is hoping that Hamilton can actually get closer to Vettel to try and make an overtake maneuver on him, so that then he's got more clean air to try and overtake on Sebastian Vettel, of course, and then Hamilton, because Vettel's car obviously much slower than the two cars behind him.
Just over a second between all three of these drivers battling for 7th right now.
And just to remind you, we've got 4 minutes and 20 seconds left. Perez is currently in first. Leclerc second, 3.7 seconds behind. That's quite important, because Perez is currently being investigated and will be investigated after the race. And they may well receive a 5-second penalty or some form of penalty for a safety car infringement that he'd performed whilst behind the safety car. So we'll look at the time very carefully. But Perez in first, Leclerc second, Sainz in third, Norris and Ricciardo fourth and fifth of the McLaren, and Stroll in sixth, whilst Vettel is battling to try and stay ahead in seventh, ahead of Hamilton and Verstappen. So a very interesting field right now.
Yes, we currently have a three-way battle for 7th, which is very exciting here in the closing stages of this race, with a bit of a DRS train being formed from Stroll all the way down to Max Verstappen. But Max Verstappen very close now on Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton even closer on Sebastian Vettel, 0.3 seconds.
So these cars keep getting closer and closer, but then they just form that little bit of a gap, as I say, because of these corners just before the start-finish straight. You see these corners just cause a problem in terms of building up enough of a gap that there's not enough road to make the overtake stick for either of these drivers.
If Max Verstappen gets close enough, we could see a repeat of his overtake into that hairpin, but I think he is still too far back at this stage. 0.6 seconds, 0.5 now between himself and Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton's DRS wide open, obviously making it difficult for Max Verstappen, who also has DRS, just forming, as I said earlier, that DRS train. 2 minutes and 42 seconds left of this race.
Which means that we should be heading into the final 2 laps. Perez will cross the start-finish line twice more before going into the last lap. I think
4.5 seconds now between Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc possibly trying to put in a 5-second buffer, possibly just in case he does get given a penalty. Charles Leclerc desperately trying to close that gap.
yes, clearly the Ferrari mechanics have told Leclerc about the potential penalty that Perez could face after the race. So told to get within 5 seconds of Perez.
Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton very close through this sector.
Only 2 minutes to go, and we still have battles in 7th for Vettel, Hamilton, and Verstappen. Verstappen really struggling to get past Hamilton as a result of Hamilton having his own DRS.
And
as Hamilton
Hamilton
goes,
tries for a move on Sebastian Vettel, but that could help Max Verstappen close that gap just that little bit now as Hamilton tries to go on the inside.
Oh,
and
Hamilton
Max Verstappen
completely
overtakes Lewis Hamilton as Hamilton goes wide.
Hamilton completely stuffs up. Tell you, when we talk about races that have been bad today, Verstappen and Hamilton have both had terrible races between them, but Hamilton even more so.
As we have 1 minute and 20 seconds left of this session. Max Verstappen now very close on Sebastian Vettel, our last race winner here in Singapore. Hamilton just choosing a wrong line through that sector, trying to overtake Sebastian Vettel, completely loses grip and just gets overtaken by Max Verstappen.
Huge lockup from Hamilton. And if we stop the replay, I'm sure that we'll see that Max Verstappen is now currently battling with Vettel. Will Max Verstappen manage to get ahead of Vettel before the race is done? There's only 46 seconds left of this race.
I think when the clock runs out, they will still have to do one more lap, if I do remember the rules
of course,
correctly.
Yeah. So we will have obviously another race, another lap after that. But
Max Verstappen's tyres must surely be starting to fall off now, but still able to keep that pressure on to Sebastian Vettel. 0.5 seconds splitting the two of them. Max Verstappen currently in the position that he started in 8th.
Yes, Perez is not going to get around in time for 2 laps, so he's definitely going to move into the final lap, Perez, as he comes around into sector 3.
Max Verstappen right on the tail now of Sebastian Vettel.
And Perez has managed to build up a gap of more than 5 seconds to Leclerc, so even if he should receive a potential 5-second penalty, he should be safe as long as he gets back from the end of this race. It is currently 0. The race is finished. Now they are finishing up, so we'll see. I assume Perez will either have to do one more lap or may well actually be told, given a checkered flag right now.
Max Verstappen very close, 0.7 seconds between himself and Sebastian Vettel. Was 0.1 at one stage, but he had just a little bit of a moment exiting one of the tight corners.
Unfortunately, Verstappen's little moment there may well have cost him that 7th place. I don't think he's going to be able to get within a distance to take Vettel before the end of this race. Perez is now currently doing the final lap of the race.
Max Verstappen now in the back straight DRS zone, trying to make as much positions on Sebastian Vettel as possible, as we are now within our final lap of the Singapore Grand Prix.
And Perez... So Perez still has managed to build up a much bigger gap over Leclerc. I think Leclerc's tyres were hit after trying to get past Perez for a good while. I think he burnt out his tyres a little bit too early. Perez was told to go and attempt a fastest lap.
Max Verstappen now into the penultimate corner, into the last DRS zone on the start-finish straight. Just not close enough at this moment to make too many gains on Sebastian Vettel.
I suppose the only tactic that Merckmeister put in terms of Russell, by the way, going to the pits, we found it very weird in terms of going to the safety car to a soft tyre. To go and do a fast lap is the fact that it does take the point away from Red Bull, of course.
Yes.
So,
but at this moment, I think it's a bit futile to try to steal at least 1 point away from them when they are so far ahead in every championship at this moment.
Yes, Perez being told to absolutely push to the line.
Max Verstappen takes Sebastian Vettel into turn 5, makes that move stick, and is now up into 7th position.
So Max Verstappen does move into 7th.
Definitely a great race here today for Sergio Perez as he crosses the line and wins the Singapore Grand Prix.
So Perez first, Leclerc comes in at second too far behind. Even if Perez should receive a 5-second time penalty, he's not close enough, so Perez should hold on to that podium position. Leclerc in second and Sainz in third. So my prediction correct. We have a Red Bull and 2 Ferraris on the podium. Followed, now this is where it went bizarre. We
Still
have
waiting
Norris,
for Lando Norris to cross the line at the moment. He has just crossed the line now.
Norris in fourth, and his teammate Ricciardo following very far behind him, but should cross in fifth as well.
Just waiting for the rest of the drivers at the moment to cross the line. Still waiting some time with a big gap between Norris and Ricciardo. 21 seconds between Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo at this moment.
And Ricciardo should be crossing the line any second now in fifth.
Brilliant performance from Sergio Perez and Red Bull here today.
And indeed, Ricciardo over the line in fifth, Stroll in sixth, Verstappen in seventh,
Sebastian Vettel in 8th, Lewis Hamilton in 9th,
Gasly 10th.
Bottas in 11th, Kevin Magnussen in 12th, Mick Schumacher in 13th, and at the end of the grid is George Russell, with our retirements being Yuki Tsunoda, Esteban Ocon, Fernando Alonso, Nicholas Latifi, and Zhou Guanyu.
As well as... no, sorry, I'll take it away. Yes. So, a fantastic, very interesting race.
Yes, for sure. Was definitely nail-biting to the last lap here, as we see a replay of Max Verstappen's overtake on Sebastian Vettel on that last lap. Just got such a good run there with the DRS, didn't even need to go to the breaking point. Will certainly be a big debrief for Red Bull today.
Indeed. But at the end of the day, still a relatively decent day for Red Bull. Sergio Perez finishes in first. Ferrari will be chuffed, but also a little bit upset not getting the top of the log. But a good day for Ferrari as well. Second and third. Carlos Sainz did a very good team job.
Yes, as we hear now, Charles Leclerc on the team radio.
But yes, that was a very, very good race indeed. Of course, Max Verstappen does not make enough points at all in this race to take the Drivers' Championship, but he does manage to make himself into the points after having, to be honest, a really difficult day. Hamilton also having a very tough day.
As we see the helicopter shots of Singapore with the fireworks going on, what a stunning Grand Prix circuit this is, and glad to have it back on the calendar.
Indeed.
Since 2019 when we last raced here.
Yes, so Sergio Perez will be very ecstatic with his second win for the season. He is going to get pushed into the top position. He's going to be a very excited Mexican. And we have the 2 Ferraris alongside him there. As we see all the cars pulling in. It's great to see the 2 McLarens coming in fourth at fifth. So good points for them today. They are going to be probably the most happy team today. I think they will probably be very chuffed, especially with Daniel Ricciardo starting so low down. Surely driver of the day goes to Daniel Ricciardo, having started so far down the grid and now managing to pull himself up into fifth. Probably, I think, his best position for the entire season.
Yes, certainly the best finishes for McLaren this season. They'll be very happy with that down in the UK.
So yes, we have Sergio Perez here pulling in, getting out of his car as he's won. All the fireworks going off in the background.
Brilliant race weekend from him, having performed so well yesterday in qualifying when his teammate was not able to extract everything out of that car.
It looks like a very tired Sergio Perez as he gets out of the car. He celebrates, but he definitely looks like a very, very tired man indeed. As we do know, it's so humid in Singapore. I imagine he is absolutely drenched, and that's not from the rain. So, yes, Red Bull celebrating with Sergio Perez now. It's just a fantastic race. So your thoughts on the race? Was just...
Yes, it was very interesting. Obviously, I was very excited to have the interchanging conditions throughout, going from wet tires into softs or into slicks at the end of the race. Was definitely difficult for them to know when to do that changeover, as we saw with the likes of George Russell on the Mercedes, just going a bit too early and not being able to make that those places up that he lost in that pit stop. But unfortunately, with Max Verstappen, just damage limitation today, only being able to make up one position from his starting grid position today.
Yeah. As I say, a race riddled in the typical Singapore scenario of safety cars, virtual safety cars, lots of drivers crashing out, 6 in total. A very interesting final grid that we've got there, with Perez on top, the 2 Ferraris behind that, followed by the McLarens of Norris, Ricciardo, and then Stroll, who's also probably got one of his best finishes in his career there, and then Max Verstappen in 7th, Vettel 8th, Hamilton 9th, Gasly 10th, Bottas 11th, Magnussen 12th, Schumacher 13, Russell 14. So,
This is Max's first race of the season where he has not finished on the podium.
Indeed. So Max Verstappen does not go to the driver's box after this. He just simply goes back to his garage and can have a relax
we'll
there.
definitely be having a lot of chats today with the Red Bull mechanics. Also, a lot of retirements from today's session, which is not too much of a surprise here in Singapore, as it is very similar to Monaco, where the walls are just so close and mistakes can lead to you ending the race.
Indeed.
Obviously, with Yuki Tsunoda, Esteban Ocon with an engine failure, Alex Albon, Fernando Alonso as well with a engine failure, and then the last 2, Nicholas Latifi and Guan Yu Zhou, who ended up taking each other out.
And I'm sure we'll see Latifi probably get a penalty for the next race, because it was so blatantly a terrible piece of driving, let's be honest. Yeah, a fantastic race. I think we've both really enjoyed it. I hope you guys have all really enjoyed it.
Yes, it's been great to have all of you tuning into our stream today, and we hope to see you for the next one.
Indeed. So that we are going to wrap up now. That was Singapore. Probably the most interesting race, well, one of the more interesting races of the season. And we'll catch you in the next race. So enjoy. Till then, goodbye.